disapprove the minutes? Since you've all voted aye, I'm going to assume not. Okay. We're going to go on to item number 2, which is the Village at Litchfield Park Community Facilities District ad valorem tax for fiscal year 23. Ms. Peterson, do you have a presentation? Well, there she is. You're a Zoomer also.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. It seems to be working good. I don't have a presentation. Just briefly, this will allow Maricopa County to put the ad valorem tax for the CFD on the tax bills this fall.
Are there any questions from Ms. Peterson? Is there a motion to adopt resolution CFD 22-44, setting the ad valorem tax levy for fiscal year 23 at the Village at Community Park Facility, Village at Litchfield Park Community Facilities District in the amount of $364,515 and authorizing Maricopa County to calculate the final rate per $100 of assessed valuation.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is adopted. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Village at Litchfield Park Community Facilities District? For a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is adopted. We are adjourned. So this will take us to our normal agenda of the regular city council meeting. We've already had our Pledge of Allegiance, so we'll go on to mayor and council member reports on current events. Councilman Romack, do you have anything you'd like to report on?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I was gone for the last month. So
okay.
It's always nice to travel, but it's always nice to come back and see you.
That's wonderful. Glad to know that. Councilman Clare.
Nothing.
Councilman Donahue.
I would just like to say that Shelley Hornback, our favorite PIO from Litchfield Elementary, has officially retired, and I want to wish her a cheers. I think she did an incredible job, as her expertise is partnerships, and she created a lot of those, and with us, the city as well. I especially want to applaud her because being a PIO in a school district for the last 6 years was certainly a challenge. And she always did it with a smile. We all know Shelley. She's just done a great job. And so I wish her well. And she's been replaced by a gentleman by the name of Sam Nuanez, who comes to Litchfield as a PIO from the Littleton district. So I'm sure Matthew's heard from him already. If not, Shelley's work is in good hands. But I just want to send her off with a cheers on retirement.
All right, thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor.
I have nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, I don't have anything of particular import other than I want to let the council know that there are several members of our community who are interested in doing additional development work in Litchfield Square. And so the city manager and I have met with a couple of them and encouraged them to put together their proposals and get them in the JLL process, which will be very similar to the process that we used for the proposal from Mr. Hurth. With that, then we'll go on to a response to the call of the community from last meeting. Last meeting, former Mayor Barleycorn came and spoke on behalf of the Camelback Wall. He was in favor of extending the current 10-foot wall along the perimeter of the park that is now essentially not, there's a very small wall. That issue is in the process of being worked on by the engineering group. They're preparing plans for that wall. We have had public meetings, and I'm sure we'll have additional public meetings as we go forward to discuss with the residents who live in that area whether the height of the wall, and whether the wall would have maybe a few areas where there would be a few feature at least to help mitigate just the size of that length of wall with no homes, no homes in front of it. So that's an issue that's being worked on, and we will keep Mr. Barleycorn informed as it progresses. And if he wants to make additional comments, he'll be welcome to do so. So, Mr. City Manager, if you'd make sure the engineering department does that, keeps him informed as one of the residents in that area that has an interest in the wall. Okay, so that brings us now to this meeting's called the community. It's an opportunity for citizens to address the council on a non-agenda item. I do not know that we have any requests to speak. Is that correct, Ms. Sinclair? There have been no requests to speak. So we will go on to the presentation section of the agenda. First item in the presentation section is one of my most favorite things that we do throughout do each quarter. And that is to recognize the efforts of our employee of the quarter. This quarter, our employee of the quarter is Jenna Huffman. And I can give her a personal shout out that this is a very good choice. I don't get a vote in the choice, but I'm very happy with the choice that the other employees in the city made to choose her as employee of the quarter. She is my assistant, and she does a great job. I can tell you that many days that I do things as mayor, I would not get through the process if I didn't have Jenna keeping me on a path to doing what I need to get done. So I want to thank her and I want to recognize her. And we used to give gift cards, but now we give days off. Is that right? So you're going to have a day off. You better schedule it because I may not be able to have to deal with it. I didn't even like to say it. Jenna is a treasure. She does a great job for us. This recognition is very well deserved. Well, I don't know about jail, but she gets things. I get things done because of her. She will not let me just let it go. I get an email. I have to say, you thought about this yet? Where's my answer? Okay, let's try. All right. We also have two proclamations this month. Proclamations are part of the packet. I'm not going to go through them individually, but they in general support Parks and Recreation Month, which is July of 22. And they declare August of 2022 as Child Support Awareness Month. Both of these are very important topics, and I would urge you to look at the proclamations if you're interested in them. This will take us now to our public safety reports. The first report is from Goodyear Fire. We have a new presenter, I think. This is Chief Paul. Is it Paul?
We're gonna have them.
I'm sorry?
We're gonna have the presenters sit here.
Okay, that's a good idea. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Ed Paul, Deputy Fire Department. I'm here to talk tonight about the fire department activities in Litchfield Park for the month of June. Total incidents in Litchfield Park, 63. That's the same as June of last year. Let's see, 42 of those were emergency medical incidents. 5 more were motor vehicle accidents. 1 was a gas leak, 5 false alarms, 7 good intent calls that were either canceled en route or on scene, 1 lockout, 1 B assignment, and 1 fire. So I have some details about specific locations. Usually we talk about La Loma and Hacienda. La Loma had 5 incidents, and they all resulted in transports. None of those were false. Hacienda, on the other hand, had 13 incidents. 7 of the 13 were false. 5 of them resulted in refusals, so that people didn't want to go to the hospital after being evaluated. And 8 of the other incidents were transports to a medical facility. So the falls, the last time I presented, more than half the calls were false. So we are reaching out to Hacienda again to talk to them about fall prevention. see what we can do to help them understand how to prevent that.
Can we require them to give us some sort of follow-on report that shows they've done training with their employees? Do we have any authority to require them to do that?
I don't think we have the authority to do that. We will talk to them. Our EMS chief, will start to visit with them more. We thought that after the last time I was here, we saw a decline in falls. This is just another spike in falls.
I'm sorry? They have a state license. I'm not sure they have a city license. The city license that tells us if they're legal business. So, Mr. City Attorney, maybe you could take a look at what areas might have ability to exercise some way to encourage them. This training needs to be done. We need documentation on the training that it's done. Make sure that it's in there.
You know, we've looked into that in the past on those trying to do that or try to recoup some of the costs associated with the calls for that specific industry. So not a lot that the city can do, but we'll look into what we can follow up with, what we require, and what we can ask them. Just because if they don't have, we can't enforce it, we can still ask them if they comply.
I wonder if we would be able to have the ordinance that would require anyone using our fire emergency services that if they have a certain number of calls that are all the same thing that could be preventable, that if they're required by the city limits to do training of their employees, document to us that they've done something to try to mitigate it in the future.
Sure.
The false calls, are we saying refusal of service as a false call? We treat that as a false call?
Well, we were called there for a fall, and then they refused to let us take them to the hospital. We evaluate them, we let them make that choice, and they didn't want to go to the hospital.
But there was an evaluation.
Yes. Yes.
Referral to the hospital.
Depending on what the severity of the fall is. One of them sounds like the person slipped out of their chair. They just needed assistance back up. But the other ones were reported as bleeding while we were en route. But when we got there, we always try and get them to go to the hospital, and they refused to go.
Any other questions for the chief? All right, thank you for coming down and making the report. Do you have something else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about two of the incidents. We sent our CR vehicle, and our CR it's called the Community Response Vehicle. It's really a crisis response vehicle that has a paramedic and a crisis counselor on there. This is fairly new to Goodyear, but we will send them on house fires, bad, if somebody dies, if somebody drowns, cardiac arrest, things like that, we will dispatch them to take care of any family members that might be there. So we did that twice in the month of June. So we anticipate seeing that more and more. It's only a 40-hour car that runs right now, but we're hoping to expand that to 24 hours a day in the next few years.
Sounds good. Thank you for your service to our community. Please pass that along to all the departments. Look out for us, which we appreciate.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the report from the city of Avondale Police Department. I'm not sure who we have. Sergeant Rios. It says in my notes here that you're Chief Espinoza today. That's what I was looking at, thinking, I'm sure this is not accurate. Thank you for coming in his place.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes. Sergeant Manny Rios, formerly Litchfield Park Sergeant. As of July 11th, I am now the Property Crime Sergeant for the City of Avondale, but here for this meeting today to present on last month's activities. For the month of June, The City of Avondale Police respond to 191 calls for service here in Litchfield Park. 75 of those calls were officer generated, which breaks down to 39% of the calls. 116 calls for service were citizen generated, which amounted to 61% of the calls for service. And for the year from July 1 to June 30th, we took a total of 3,097 calls for service here in Litchfield Park. 1,529 of those being officer generated, which is 49%. And then 1,568 of those were citizen generated, which is 51%. So it's about even. For this month, we have 5 flock alerts. 2 of those vehicles from the alerts were located. One was a wanted person in Sunset Terrace, 4 officers located, and the driver who was associated with the alert had a warrant that they had to take care of, so we took them into custody. In addition to that, we also had a stolen vehicle alert. The vehicle was located at the Wigwam. 2 persons associated with the vehicle were located, and they were arrested for felony warrants, non-Litchfield Park residents. And I also wanted to give everyone an update on the criminal damages that the city experienced the month prior in May for the moniker under Shock. So our detectives were able to identify Shock. He is a juvenile male from Litchfield Park. Due to him being a juvenile, we can't release much information. However, we are going to submit charges against him to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for criminal damage. And we also made it a note on the case for the county attorney to consult with the city of Litchfield Park for any restitution or prosecutorial notes in that manner. Smirk is the other moniker that we see criminal damage on, but that one's being investigated by our Criminal Investigations Bureau in the city due to the fact that it not only happens here in Litchfield Park, but it's also taking place in the city of Avondale. So that case is also being investigated by our detectives. Our agency just began its new calendar year. So for Litchfield Park, the changes that took place are the nighttime officer. We used to have Officer Joseph Buggy being the weekend graveyard shift officer, but he has since gone back to Avondale. And his replacement is Officer Gloria Gonzalez. She's a new weekend nighttime officer here in Litchfield Park. She's a good asset to Team Litchfield Park. She has good ties here in the city. Her child attends school here, and she has a lot of good relationships with the city as well. And then the new sergeant, his name is Ray Emmett. He's been with the city of Avondale, I believe, since 2014 or so. He's an excellent sergeant, and he's going to be leading the team from here on out. And that's all I have.
Questions from council? Okay. Thank you for your report. We appreciate you taking your time to come down and give it to us in person. Thank your guys and gals for the service they give to our residents. And I know it's greatly appreciated, and we're very, very happy that you're serving as our police department. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Have a good evening.
Okay, this brings us into our report section. And the report section allows me to get back and correct an error of jumping over the city manager's report. I assigned him without telling him, I assigned him to give his report in the report section this time. So do you have a report for us, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir. I was going to say that. Mayor and Council, as always, you have this much report in your packet. I will just hit on a few things. One of these is we're still trying to buy new city vehicles. We've been trying to buy some vehicles since January 22. Some of you may know, of course, it's very hard to find chips right now, and that's why we're still waiting for cars. They're just very hard to get new vehicles right now. And that is not our police Tahoes. Those are currently being outfitted. Sergeant Rios just was telling me that they have been decaled, now they're just waiting on the light bars. But we're trying to buy wheels for public works too, but it's just a matter of chips of them coming in, so we are working on doing just that. As a reminder, the new fiscal year began July 1st, which was the fiscal year. Recently, we met with public works staff. It had been raised that there was concern that could public works work 4 10s instead of 5 8s. We did look at the feasibility of doing that, and we looked at the guys vote on it. And long story short, they voted. 3 of them voted to go to 4 10s. 15 of them voted to stay the other way. So we stayed on 5 8s, but we didn't get much of this. A few of the things, the annual audit is scheduled for September 27th to September 29th. So I know Paige looks forward to working with auditors when they be here. As always, been great audits. And lastly, the past week we spent a lot of time working on the parking garage funding methods. As you know, today there are no parking garages in Litchfield Park, but one day there may be 3, there may be 4, depending on how big Litchfield Spring grows. So that's a key part of the development. You'll see that later tonight. We work on those equations. And long story short, we're planning for, again, depending on the pace of development, between $26 and $30 million in parking garages. Again, if it goes up that much. And basically, the city would fund 25% of those, and the developers would fund the 75% of those, largely through a sales tax only on each split. But again, staff spent a lot of time in the last 2 years working on this model. We've also got numbers back for 30-year bonds. We also ran numbers on 40-year bonds. And if you can believe it, there's very little difference annually between a 40-year bond and a 30-year bond. Obviously, those numbers are up for change as interest markets change. That is my report for tonight. I would also like to thank our staff working on our IT. As you know, we're not only in this building, we're doing the best we can with IT that we have. So we thank you for your patience with us, but thank you again for our staff for trying to get the best IT we could in the situation. Thank you, sir.
Yes, questions? Councilwoman, thank you. Matthew, good report. Thank you for that. We do work with Avondale from time to time, and they're doing 410s. Their city hall is closed on Fridays. I find it difficult sometimes for when I need to do them, but the other side of that is maybe that is a person to reach out to and ask them what they think of their 410s. I don't know. It's a real pain when you need an inspection and can't get it for 4 days. Just compound some of your problems.
It does have its challenges. And for us, basically, we would end up splitting the shifts. So we would have some guys here Monday through Thursday, some Tuesday through Friday. So there would still be guys here on Friday, but they'd be working 14 schedules. So it could be done. But overwhelmingly, they didn't want to because it makes the hard reports in the summertime. They're off at 2:30. And obviously, if they're doing 410s, they're having to work later in the day in less than hotter hours. So it has unique challenges that office staff do have. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Clear. All right. Excuse me. Let me add, just to add on what the city manager said about this room. We went through the process of scheduling this room, particularly for this meeting, because we thought there was going to be a public hearing that could have significant amount of members of the public wanting to attend, and we wanted to have plenty of room, particularly given the state of the COVID situation in Maricopa County today, so that we would be able to allow people to be able to spread out and maybe feel a little bit more comfortable. We're going to use this room for the next several meetings for that reason, so that hopefully our council will be here in person in the future, and we'll have enough room that the public can feel comfortable being here, and a bit more so than the library setting, and there will be enough room for the council itself to have some space around, make the council feel more comfortable as we get back to the habit of meeting in person. So with that, we'll go on to our finance report. Ms. Peterson, do you have a report for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The end of the fiscal year ended June 30th. So this month I have just a very short report because we'll continue to post transactions for that fiscal year through the end of August. But I did want to give you a report on our sales tax for June. Our retail sales shows that it's down 35%. However, we had a few businesses that missed the reporting deadline. So had they reported, I believe our retail would be as high as 2021 or maybe even a little bit higher. So that's throwing the numbers off. When we receive that in July, then I will update these numbers and give you an actual count next month. The other categories, our online sales were up 30%. Our restaurant and bars were up 18%. I'm sorry, I forgot to share my screen. Just one second. There we go. Restaurant and bars are up 18%, utilities 30%, rentals 18%, and then our other category is 9%. So since we're missing a big chunk of our retail overall, we're down 10%. However, I think it would be, we would actually be up 10% had those businesses reported on time. Our construction sales tax, we collected $53,000 last month. Last year's number is skewed because we issued that significant refund, so we're right on target where we should be. In total, we've collected $2.1 million in construction sales tax, which is 490% of our budget for the year. And then our sales tax, excluding construction sales tax, we've collected 9.8, so we're at 22% over last year, and we're at 140% of our budget estimate. And since it's such a short report, this is all I have, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Councilor Romero.
Yeah, hey, good job. I don't know who writes the check. Thank you for all that. What Matthew in his report talked about parking and cost of parking lots. Is that going to come up later?
It's part of the development agreement, so as far as that breaks down. Not what that actual model would be, but how we break it down between the city versus the developers.
Okay. Is that something to discuss now, or is it up in general level?
I think it'd be better discussing the development agreement conversations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Ms. Peters? All right, thank you for your report. Next item is a report on Litchfield Square. Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. So we made some pretty good progress in the last few months since we've gotten past the APS hurdle. APS has been attending all of our meetings, so it's been a great help. And the scheduling. As you've noticed, we've gotten the base paving down on the north side. And tomorrow morning, very early, the traffic control will be flipped over so that traffic is now on that pavement going in both directions. Should be very interesting to see how cars are going both directions around the curve. But reducing the speed limit down to 15 miles per hour. So once the traffic's flipped over, then braking gardeners can start demolishing the existing improvements on the west side. People ready for curb and gutter pavement on that side. That should start happening next week, the next couple of weeks. Also, we should start seeing curb and gutter going in on Village Parkway, Village Parkway Extension in the next couple of weeks. We're wrapping up the underground utility conduit installations, and then hope to have all of the conduit and the APS equipment and conductors pulled into those conduits by the first week of October, and have everything start to be energized. We're currently finalizing the park designs. There's still a few details that we're working on there, but as some of you know, we've expanded some of the sidewalks around. We've added some picnic tables, charging stations, things like that, that kind of rounding out that and finishing up that design of the park. The phase 2 paving plans are now complete with all of the other streets besides the Field Road and Village Parkway. So Deacon Gardner is now working on the GMP4 for that work, which will hopefully bring to the council at the September meeting. And then we've been working very hard on EV charging stations. We want to make sure we're providing EV charging stations for some of our customers. Initially, we're going to have 6 installed on the streets, but those can be expanded to up to 13 more by the time we finish parking lots and indoor parking garages. So when everything's built out, if we don't expand it further, then we'll be able to provide charging for the vehicles in this square. And it's kind of a fine balance because the rate of EV charging, electric vehicle purchases in the United States is really skyrocketing. And the tough thing is trying to meet that balance between tying up a parking space for only an electric vehicle, whereas another gasoline powered vehicle could park there, versus having enough in the future, 20 years down the road. It's very hard to predict how many vehicles are going to be wanting to park in this square. So we've upsized the infrastructure so that it can be expanded. That's all I have.
We have within our specifications for the parking lots that are being built in conjunction with each of the buildings. So that those parking lots will also have EV charging stations in that as well. All right. Any other questions?
And we footprint where the parking stations are going to be in the parking lot, maybe away from the building, that is retail space for parking lot.
Yeah, well, we're actually just studying right now out that parking lot. So when we get into the final design, so we'll figure out where we actually want to have EV charging stations. Really, I guess you only have to and then we can make that decision.
I think actually you want to have at the end of the parking lot, so you try to take space away from customers. What I've seen in other environments is the spaces there that are away from retail or the commercial, so that customers can get out regular parking.
Sorry, I haven't gotten down to retail. It makes sense.
There's also the issue of if you need like 2 hours of charging, you park there for 8 or 10 hours.
Yep. You don't want to.
How do you just turn over?
Yeah. Rather not take up space.
We can limit the amount of time to spend there.
Almost the company that we acquired talked about
They decided not to install any facilities. They came too late in order to get into the front trench that Fox and Century went through. That was all designed approved by the APS, and to let them come into that front trench, they meant to go back to start with APS for the approval process all over the street. We offered, and they prepared backbone design as AD Gardner present a proposal to them to install that conduit so that they could serve the park, some of the buildings, some of the lots. And when they got the proposal, they decided.
So we are going to have access to Century Fox.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's good.
Any other questions from council?
Oh, Vice Mayor,
Oh, yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
thank you. The audio is very choppy, so I'm not sure exactly what the conversations were that we just heard. But Woody, I've been approached a couple of times by companies that do install charging systems, and they install them free, and they don't want to pay rent. They just want the land to be donated. They put their charging systems in. If we're talking about spending a significant amount of money putting the systems in, there may be people out there that'll put them in for nothing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're actually looking into right now. There are a couple of networks like ChargePoint. I think Panda is another one. And we are looking into that right now to see if, they provide the billing services along with the EV charging station. So that's something that we're going to be making the decision on. if, you know, those people, if they're interested, just send them my way.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Staunton, for your report. Next item of the business is the PGA North theme update. Mr. City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It'll be a pretty short update. This is a slow month for Phoenix Goodyear Airport Superfund site. A lot of activity in the south side, south of Van Buren. For the north areas, start off with the city well. So PGA representatives requested to not have to test the city of Litchfield well yearly. We had a couple of meetings with them and ultimately decided that they're going to continue the test for well. The TCE, the plume is actually retracting to the south, which is why they proposed to not test our well. We convinced them that we want to hang on for another couple of years to make sure that well is truly retracted. Results from the PGA documents they sent out show that the contouring, which is levels underground above, receding towards the south, so that's good to us. As far as the overall containment, the hydraulic containment in the north is being controlled by re-injection wells of clean water. After it's treated, it's re-injected. We have several wells that are between roughly Indian School and RID well that re-inject clean water, which pushes that to the south. Those are fully operational and have been operations since the beginning. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions, council?
Vice Mayor.
Do you have a question, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you. I think I read in the report to council that the plume was under the city of Litchfield Park. And I don't believe that is correct. It started to head to Litchfield Park and we became extremely active and we got EPA and the city of Goodyear involved, and a lot of those injection rails and treatment stuff was put in place so that the plume was stopped. It was just approaching, I think, our lake well. And I think it's been pushed back now. So if I'm correct, I'd be a little hesitant just to have reports to staff that say the plume is under Litchfield.
Mr. Vice Mayor, so the best information that I've seen is about as far north as it's gotten is roughly where the Goodyear ballpark is. It's in the northern fields of those ballparks. So it didn't quite go farther north than the RID canal. And that happened to coincide with when the injection wells came into service in the last couple of years. So as it progressed to the north, those injection wells also came online. So it's very good timing to just have to cut it off at
It wasn't by chance.
No, they had been monitoring it. If you look at an actual map, the number of wells that have been drilled for them to locate the plume, it's in the hundreds. So as they suspect a new location, they drill a testing well, and then if it looks like it's heavy concentrations, they'll take other injection wells offline, move them to the expansion location, which is why we have several roughly in between Indian School and the RID well. And those have definitely been making an impact. The mapping that I showed for the last council meeting shows there's that horn that we talked about towards the west that's pushing back. That horn in the next couple of months will get it further away.
I think the Vice Mayor's point was that plume never reached Litchfield Park.
Correct.
And quite frankly, it didn't reach Litchfield Park because it was a concerted effort by Litchfield Park and Avondale, particularly with Goodyear, a little bit with Goodyear, to make sure that it did not. We had meetings with the EPA, we had a variety of things in Washington, D.C. It was quite an effort to get out of the park. So we just want to make sure it stays out of the park.
All the information I'm seeing is that is what's happening.
Yeah, we became very noisy back in those days. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, council? No? Good. All right, thank you. Next item of business is the consent agenda. Items 9A through J. Is there any member of the council who wishes to take any item on the consent agenda off the consent agenda for discussion? If not, is there a motion to adopt consent agenda items 9A through J? Been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is adopted. Now we're going to go on to our normal business agenda, item 10, and A is Streetlight Improvement District SLIDs 1, 2, and 3. We have to set the ad valorem tax levy for 2023. Ms. Peterson.
Paige, your sound is not coming through.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have a presentation for this, but this will allow Maricopa County to collect the property taxes for SLID 1, 2, and 3. Nothing's changed since the final adoption, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Okay, seeing none. Looking for the amount of this page in your packet. Where did you put in the amount of the tax? Because I'm not seeing it here.
I can pull it up really quick and share my screen.
It looks like SLID 1 is 35,000.
Yes, just under 35,000 with a rate of
Right.
45.77. Or sorry, the levy is 35,035 with a rate of 45.77.
So is there a motion to adopt resolution number 22-534, setting the levies for SLIDs 1, 2, and 3 to the ad valorem tax, consistent with the presentation in your packet of the amounts to be assessed and the actual levies that will produce those amounts. Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Ms. Peterson, is the motion sufficient for your purposes?
Yes, we just need to set the rates and then authorize Maricopa County to do their final rate calculation because they do the final property valuations in August. So once they complete the final, there could be a slight change to this rate if the valuation changes.
So specifically, the levies for 2023 will be in SLID 1, $35,035. In SLID 2, $153,618, and in SLID 3, $40,006.
That's correct. And then I've estimated what I believe those rates will be, but those could possibly change, but the levy amount will not.
Any discussion or comments from council? All those in favor of adopting the resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the levies are adopted. Next item is consideration of an ordinance changing the purchasing authority for the city manager. Mr. City Manager, do you have comments or presentation?
Yes, Mr. Manager. This is the second reading of this ordinance. Basically, what this ordinance does is it raises this ordinance in the amount back and forth. Currently, as you know, anything over $10,000 requires council approval. It's been that way for a long time. And of course, the city buys a lot of things, and basically $10,000 isn't going as far as it used to. So we're requesting to change this $10,000 to $50,000. It would still require 3 quotes, as it always does. But again, anything under $50,000 I could approve. Anything over 50 grand would come to council for approval. I realize again that is a big change going from 10 to 50, but again, things much more expensive than they used to be, and it's been 10,000 for a long time. I think it makes sense. I certainly welcome questions if there are any.
Questions from council? If not, is there a motion to adopt ordinance 22-260 related to city code 3-4-4, purchasing authority of the city manager? So second. Second by Councilman Brandon Watson. Any further discussion by council? Oh, the vice mayor question.
Yeah. Can I do
All
that?
right, yeah, I suppose, why not?
Paul, can you hear me? This is a big jump from 10 to 50. Granted, I don't know what numbers or what sort of things across, and this is a pretty big leap to do all at one time. What are your thoughts on
It is a big leap. I mean, this would allow going as far as buying cars, police cars and stuff without coming to us. Maybe there's a number or something between 10,000 and 50,000 that would give a greater comfort level for now. Maybe it's 30, 40.
Well, for me, I think it probably makes sense to do this done with it, but it gives me a little pause to go through.
In your packet, the memo in the packet provides a good list of the types of things that at public council that really could have been purchased by the city manager using the budget authority that he has. That a lot of these things, it makes very little sense for them to come to council. And they're, for example, computers. We had to approve a $30,000 purchase of computers, but we already had put in the budget to do it. Now we have to approve the actual purchase because it's just a waste of a lot of time. Full chemical system, 21,000. Rec AC replacement costs. To do something to replace an air conditioner, we got it's a $43,000 bill. It has to come to council. I think this is what we hired the city manager to do, to buy these things. And we provide our own budget. He needs to live in the budget and do its job. Okay, that's my thought. Mr. Vice Mayor, did you have anything further you'd like to add?
Well, and having to come to us causes delays in getting some of this stuff done. So some of the smaller stuff, we're going to see it probably after the fact, these purchases. If we don't like it in the future, I suppose we can go back and change it or, change some kind of purchasing regulation.
All right, any further discussion by council on this motion for ordinance 22-26?
I make the motion and I feel it's a good thing. If we see an issue or there's a transaction that raise a red flag, I think it makes sense to expedite getting things done.
Councilman Brandon Watson.
Could there be some sort of protection put in there that says, if it exceeds the budgeted amounts by, I don't know, a logical percentage, you guys might figure that out easier than I can right now, but if it exceeds what's budgeted for maintenance and repairs or purchasing of vehicles, then it has to go before council. So if, for example, Matt decides he wants to buy a new vehicle and we haven't budgeted for a new vehicle, and it's 20% more than what we had in our budget for the year for vehicles, then he'd have to bring that motion to the council.
I think we're adding a lot of complication. Mr. City Manager, you can obviously give us a report every week. You can include in your report page 5. If it's anything significant or you're concerned that maybe we're gonna come back to you in 6 months and say, what the heck were you doing? What were you thinking? So what were you thinking? Put it in your report. Okay, Councilman Brandon Watson. So we'll get notice. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of adopting ordinance? I'm sorry?
You just did a roll call for it.
We can do that. So we're gonna have a roll call on the ordinance. Just the city clerk will call the roll. This is for adopting ordinance 22-260.
Vice Mayor Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Brandon Watson,
Aye.
Councilmember Claire,
Aye.
Councilmember Womack,
Aye.
Mayor Schmidt.
Aye. Donahue.
Aye.
All right, here's the motion passes. Next item on our agenda is Scout Lodge design. Mr. City Manager, you have a report?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're actually going to split this item. So one thing I would point out to you first of all is that on the CC, when we put this number here before, originally it was $29,000. We actually increased that to $33,000 plus the DPC. So again, we've been requesting $33,090 plus a 10% contingency. That was the document you received yesterday. I was making you aware of that change.
The amount is now 33 what?
The number sir would be $33,090 plus a 10% contingency. That 10% contingency would be $33,009.
Okay.
Okay. A few other things we'll do this. So, and earlier this year, we started the Scout Lodge Works Group, and we reached out to local people in the community that were involved in Scout Lodge, that were Scout Lodge, involved in different scouting groups, such as Girl Scout, Boy Scouts. Also, Councilman Claire, Councilman Good Circles, we've had a lot of meetings here. And there's a lot of reasons this needs to be done. One, there's some current issues with Scout Lodge that needs to be addressed. There's some interesting history there, too. Those of you who have been a long time know this, that the current Scout Lodge was built in the early 1960s by Mr. Workers through donations. There's a lot of history there. The city does own this building. There's some interesting partnerships there and how the Scout Lodge operates and how the buildings are paid for, so on and so forth. But as you know also, eventually we are going to need the parking space for Scout Lodge is today. So that got us in this conversation that we could look at 2 solutions in one. We could build a new parking area while also building a bigger, better Scout Lodge. And that's where we are today. Again, there's been various groups in this, so we're going to show you a preliminary design tonight. And again, this is just preliminary design. It's stuff to go through DRB, and we request your blessing before we spend the money for further design. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Keith for the presentation.
Mostly.
I'm not sure. We might need that. I can keep talking to them while we're doing this. I would like to thank the others that have been involved in this. We've had several meetings. It's taken a lot of partnerships. We've had the Scout Lodge group. We've had the stakeholders group. Historical Society has expressed support in doing this. Boy Scouts have also. There's been a lot of work in the community to get this done. As you know, of course, there is a lot of emotional attachment anytime you're building this thing for that long. That's going to be part of this. We understand that. Some of you were here years ago when there was the debate over the gym that was here. I was not here then. I know for sure that's the same. But again, I think you'll see when you see this Scout Lodge that it will be a much better facility. Also, this building, if built, would be used by Scouts, but would also be used by civic groups in the community. It can also be used by the city. The big room in this new design, the actual Scout Lodge today, the entire building will fit inside the big room of the new Scout Lodge. It would hold 80 people. Roughly 80 people. As you may know today, when the city holds the mayor's management meetings, we hold the West Valley management meetings, we have to rent rooms in other facilities. So we didn't have space big enough. That's something we could do in Scout Lodge. I'm not saying it's suitable for city council meetings, but for other meetings such as that DRB, PNC, you name it. And again, it would be used by Scouts, various civic groups, school groups, etc. One thing the scouts did express was they did not want to see this group used by private groups for birthday parties, that kind of thing. And I would agree to that. I think it's good to keep it for birthday parties, school groups, city groups, scouts, etc. I think that's a good compromise. A few other things we did discuss was how to fund this thing. So I will go ahead and tell you, we're expecting the Scout Lodge, the build out of the building itself to be about 1.25 million. We did approach that several ways. Originally, the Scouts had requested that they or the city be the only ones that use the facility. And we discussed that we can do that, but then there needs to be a 50-50 match. And of course, you're talking about $600,000. That's a lot of money for scouting groups. So of course, that wasn't realistic. So rather, we came back to the city paying for this facility, but again, other groups could use it. I would like to say also on the line today, we have several of our architects with us. I saw Diego is here with us.
Yes, hello.
Diego, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Valeria is also here with us, and they've both been with us at the meetings at Sowers Hall. So we thank them for being here tonight.
Welcome.
That's enough for me at this time. I'm going to turn it over to Keith for the presentation.
Thank you, sir. So to start off with the progression of the project, we started off in February, and we've had several meetings, stakeholder meetings, as well as public input meetings. Along the way with each of these meetings, the preliminary and draft designs were revised, taking in the public input, the needs of each scout member going to participate, as well as what the city like to see out of it. Currently, we're in the preliminary design here in July, and we'll move on to RPG, DRB, and city council approvals and reviews, hopefully by December. When we get after that point, we do believe that by the time summer of 23 happens, we'll be nearing, if not done with final engineering, as well as entering the construction phase and looking for bidders. Overall constraints in the area, as you can see, we're all familiar with the city square, Litchfield Park Square area. To the north is Scout Park, and the very northern limits there is the draft design overlaid with that portion of Scout Park. Theming and site analysis, as well as data collection. So we looked at all the various buildings, the churches, the city hall, the wigwam, all the proposed architecture and theming elements of the future square were all incorporated by our designers. They did a fantastic job of incorporating all these different elements of the new as well as the old. We are going to put a good spin on this project, and you are going to see some of these proposed designs, and I think everybody's going to be happy. I'm very proud of where we are at this project. Initial designs, we literally started with the hand sketch and trying to look at what just the building would sit like. We moved on to a preliminary draft design in the more north-south direction. It's kind of hard to see with the tile there, but kind of imagine that one. The very middle bottom there is a similar version, rotated and centered. Now that is the direct result of the community input from the various stakeholders as well as the working group input. There were a lot of comments received by all factions on orientation, size, all the way down to storage allotments and where the bathroom should go. And as you can see in the very middle, it's quite different than the other two. And if you go to the next one, we'll kind of give you a rundown of this is working and input meetings where we've held with individual groups as well as city departments. Cub, Boy, and Girl Scouts were also very instrumental in getting to the position right now. This is the current design, the overall footprint. Scout Lodge is, as you can see in the middle, the portion on the right-hand side of that building is storage as well as a garage entrance. To the left is the bathroom and kitchenettes. The far left of that center section, we'll see on a later image, are the exterior bathrooms that are going to serve Scout Lodge. We've also reserved a section, we're calling it the future building site. It's actually a reserved area that could be used for a number of things, future parking, recreational courts, multi-use courts. We also have the turf flex space, the ramadas, as well as other. We have a mini amphitheater up in the north end there as we're getting closer, and then some other outdoor events can happen the far north. This is the footprint, more of a zoomed in version. As Matthew mentioned, the whole Scout Lodge, as it sits today, can sit in the center rectangle portion of that. It's approximately 2,000 square feet. The current Scout Lodge is just a little bit over that. So that kind of gives you perspective of how much bigger this proposed structure is going to be. To the upper right, you see 4 quadrants there. There's different storage facilities for the Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, and Boy Scouts, equipment, outdoor and indoor events. We have the garage. Several of the Scout groups do have pull behind trailers where we want to give them a nice area where they can load and unload equipment, store equipment in the garage, and access it from both the interior and the exterior. On the far left is the bathroom situation. So we got the women and the men on the north and south there. Those are the exterior access points. There's also a center portion of the family restroom. The right-hand part of that in the middle is specifically for the Scout Lodge interiors. So those 2 bathroom areas are going to be separated.
Do you mind if we hold on that point? That was a key point in a lot of these discussions, was there's some concerns there with keeping the Scouts safe. We always want kids to be safe in our question. As you guys know, when you go to Scout Park today, there are no restrooms in Scout Park. And that seems to be a hot button issue. There are people in the community that will tell you that children that need to use the restroom at Scout Park need to go back to their homes. I will tell you that's not realistic. They will find other ways to take care of that issue. So moving on. But as Keith's saying, the outer 2 left-hand corners, again, are park restrooms. The inner 2 there are for Scout Lodge. You can't access them either or. Again, so the inside ones are only for the Scouts to use. The outer ones are park use. So that way you will not have people interacting with one another. And the middle one there is a family restroom. Thank you, Keith. I just thought that was a key point to understand. Because again, there are currently no restrooms at Scout Park today. So
no, thank you, Matthew. So this is a south elevation view. So imagine you're standing in the center of fairway looking north. As you can see, we've kept theming. The exterior portion, while it looks like wood, is a steel exterior, and it's made to look like wood. On the interior, you'll see that here in a little bit. We're going to have the truss theme continue through the center of the building. To the left are the bathrooms. To the right are the garages that you saw earlier, and we'll see other images here where there's a couple of sections where there's flag poles in the front for the ceremonies. Good. This is also a view. This is from the north. Imagine you're in Scout Park looking south. So on the left is the garage, and on the right are the bathrooms, keeping the similar elements of the wood truss theme. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see with the shadowing effect that exterior is a kind of a trussel, an open slatted trussel. So there's light that can get through, and then those windows expand left and right. So instead of up and down like a garage, they're accordion style. Here's an isometric 3D view. So as you can see, we're looking at it from the southeast, looking northwest. So the gray areas you see are roughly pull up and parking areas, the entrance driveway. On the far right, we have the entrance where they can store additional equipment or materials. You kind of see the flag poles. There's 3 flag poles in the front, and then you can get a better view of just how the building looks. We have parapets on the left and right with the traditional pitched roof in the middle. Northeast looking to the southwest. So you're at Mr. Pointer's property, looking that if you're in the air, kind of a rear view of it, and it's a better view of what we're proposing. And here's a few more 3D views. Southwest looking northeast, and then of course in the northwest corner. This is where we get a little bit more real, and we have the backdrop is not going to of course be mountainous, but I thought it was a very good element that Adaptive added. It kind of puts us in perspective that we are still in the desert. So this is a realistic view of what we think the front of the Scout Lodge. If you're looking north from Fairway, we've also added a few elements like on-street parking, and they started adding facade colors. And this is a view from the north side looking south. So you can get a really good perspective of going from that 2D flat paper look to what we're actually looking at. Go back one more. Sorry. The corral. So Matthew called it the corral. It's a wood slat fence. It's something that the scout groups have talked about. We don't want to have a keep out barrier, but we also want to have a protected kind of area that's very specific to the use of the Scout Lodge. So what that is kind of a throwback to, you know, out on the plains when they have the wood slat fences that are keeping animals in and out. We're going to propose a similar element of more durable material, but it also separates the use, the scout use from the park use. And this is really an awesome design that Adaptive and APS put together to give us a real perspective. If you guys want to take a look at it, stop by City Hall. We can run you through. It's an actual video, and you can turn in circles and look at everything. So this is kind of a screenshot of it, but it really gives you a good idea of what the interior is going to look like. See, we're keeping that open truss, pitched roof element. These are guaranteed not to settle in 50 years. That's what Adaptive told me. As you can see, we're getting these heavy rated glass so that we have natural light that enters on the north and south exposure, and then the small kind of more comfortable glass looks on the east and west. And those we anticipate will be controlled through, you know, we'll be able to control them through automated or manual, you know, window coverings. And here's another, I like this shot the best. It makes you kind of feel like you're in the building. You can see the kitchen out on the right. We're looking south, southeast. And then that little kick out to the left there is the Scoutmaster's office area. The little hallway to the far left is heading towards the storage area. So it really gives you that open feel, but also allows the scouts to have their areas of storage and doing their administrative duties. Took some shots of the Scout Lodge as it sits right now, and these are some of the elements that we want to find a way to transfer over to the new location. There's a lot of discussion about the fireplace, and we're still thinking about how to transfer that element over to the new location. Bottom left, I like that perspective because it's the one we just left. It gives you a really good view of how we're keeping that theming in the new facility. These next couple slides are just color material. Again, more theming ideas based on all the working group and stakeholder meetings, discussions with the scouts, discussions with the various city departments. We're going to take a lot of these elements as we generate the landscape aesthetics in the outside and the interior. You know, we got ideas for pavers, different designs, ornate paver designs in the front and backyard, as well as the awnings and some of the other gathering areas. And then, of course, landscape character. This is very similar to as the park has it now. And we're going to transfer that over so it's more of a desert feel, but not xeriscape. So with that, that's our short presentation. Open up to any questions, concerns, feedback.
Sure. Yeah, I have 3 little notes here, and one of them is the fireplace. It's been discussed by a lot of people in the community about how you're going to handle that. The fireplace is kind of a nice gathering point for anything like this. But I'm going to go another direction here. Who deals with the maintenance and upkeep of this building? Who's doing it? The current Scout Lodge, who maintains that building? And who's going to maintain this building?
We would be maintaining this building, sir. If you can believe it, there's actually no signed agreement for it on this building between the city and the Scouts. There was one discussion past that was signed. So what we're planning on, we've had a lot of discussions about this fireplace. We don't think we can put it intact. Rather, we disassemble it and maybe do some sort of paper party at it. And like the fire pits and other papers around this park, something along those lines. But we don't believe that we can leave the fireplace intact. And to be honest, when we work with liabilities of having the fireplace.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about that. I'm talking about the fireplace just as a gathering.
Sure.
And so building a fireplace.
And try to save all the little assets that we can.
Sure.
Along those same lines, like you may notice, the kitchen is not a commercial kitchen, it's more of a camper kitchen.
Right.
It will have a fridge and a microwave, but not a stove. But all the historical assets that we can move or save, replicate.
And there are thoughts about making Scout Lodge. We are going to make Scout Lodge on that.
Right. And it should be, let them participate in this too. Give them a little ownership. Another thing, you have two nice flat areas for solar, the solar panels on each side, so that would be something. I would hope that you or the architect, somebody looks into to minimize the ongoing costs on a regular basis. Now, you did mention, Matt, $1.2 million, or I think you mentioned in your report $1.2 million.
That's just for the ceiling, sir. That doesn't,
Just for what?
that's just for the building. That does not include the grounds around it.
That?
For the building, we're planning about 1.25. For the grounds around it, Keith, we call it 2 million even. Or am I being conservative?
I did not ask. We know prices are going up, and we know we're sitting on about $200 a square foot.
Right.
That puts us a little higher than 25. We do understand that, and we are at what I like to call the 40,000 foot level, and we're honing in. I think that footprint is going to be modified a little bit as annual costs. So
Sure. But see, when you talk about the 250, or the 1.2 million, you have 200,000 in wrong. So is that now you're at 1.4, or we at 1 million for the building?
Plans are part of the 1.2. sir.
It is, okay. I would, with all due respect, I would find that to be a surprisingly low number. I'm not saying don't do it,
No,
but
I
I'm
appreciate
saying that that number is pretty low.
And I think that your bill would certainly make spend about this, and it may very well come up higher, but the design is part of the 1.2.
Okay. I was a little kind of, it took my breath away, actually, to see the 200,000. A little over 205. Pretty aggressive, but then when you look at it, you get the whole scope of what's going on. This is a pretty complete project, and it's going to be quite nice. But I do remodels from many.
I'm interested to see what you professionally, what do you think the cost for this?
I'd have to look at it some more. I don't want to just throw something out.
I'm just curious.
Yes, I am too. I'll look at it, Matthew, and I'll get back.
Look forward to it.
We'll go out and bid it, and then get a lot cheaper price for me to get from this.
Yeah, John.
No comment.
Councilman Donahue.
I just want to say what I have loved about this, I was on the committee as well, is that this was a situation where we had naysayers that became yay-sayers. And I really applaud the community coming together with the city staff, including Diego, one of the designers who's an Eagle Scout. And I think everybody listened to everybody, and hallelujah. This is going to end up being a really nice thing. So, we often do have lots of situations when we have public and change. And I will also tell you that our beloved Paul Stuckey, I had lots of conversations about this, and he was in support of this. So here we go. Anyway, I just want to say I think that part of it has been nice.
Any other questions or comments? All right, so we're at the Vice Mayor. Can you raise your hand?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
I've not attended these meetings, but I've had conversations with people that have been in these meetings as part of this design process. I think I have a lot of the shock that maybe Councilman Romack has as to what it is that has been developed and presented to us. I thought the original concept was, we started with just picking up the old lodge and trying to move it across the street. And now we've morphed into a building that's 4 times the size of that, plus a massive amount of landscaping and $205,000 in design fees, which are shocking me huge. The design fees alone in this building are $50 a square foot. That's a little on the heavy side. So I'm wondering, through this process, how did we get to where we are? And has anybody been really looking at watching the economics or is this just an absolute wish list where everybody wished for everything they wanted and now we're looking at it?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I will try to address that, sir. We did talk about the feasibility of the existing building. There are a few structural issues there with the existing building that I would rather not go into in this meeting, just to be honest. I'll be glad to discuss that with you.
Oh, I know what they are.
Okay, all right, so thank you. So we did discuss that. We did have a list from the scouts, the things they wanted, and some of the things they wanted didn't work out. And this design came from multiple meetings from different inputs. Like originally, the building was closer to Mr. Corner's house than it is now. And after meeting with him, I addressed his concerns and we moved it over some. And we made a lot of different pieces. This is a huge jump from where it is today, no question. Just in facility and size, it's absolutely a huge jump from the current building, no question whatsoever. But again, I will say there's some things that weren't involved in this. There were some things that were requested that didn't get put in here as far as dream scenario. I understand that. But I do think, too, again, there are multiple purposes for this building, that it's not just for scouts. Again, we're taking a building away from the scouts, but we're building something else. And something that we can use, too, that civic groups can use as well. And it's something that the community is currently lacking that we do need. I think that's important. But again, it is going to be expensive. There's no question about that. And again, it leaps and bounds over what it is today, not a question. So I certainly understand your concerns. So.
Well, Matthew, I mean, I was at some of those meetings, and I think a lot of this was what the Boy Scouts wanted. I mean, they were very, very instrumental in the design of this. And didn't they at some point, and I think I saw in a report, talk about possibly raising some money to help contribute?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. For those of you that have been involved in the working group, what Councilor Donahue was talking about, several of the working group members have talked about raising $100,000 to $150,000 for various technical pieces, such as projectors, such as whiteboards, etc. And I think that's great. But again, that would be over and beyond the 1.2. That's not construction money, that's tech for the building. We talked about the idea of the scouts raising half the money, but again, they thought that was just a non-starter, just not possible, just too much money. But there were a lot of pieces involved in this, and part of this too, again, is like the restrooms. Currently, there are no restrooms at Scout Park, so this incorporates that. It takes care of that as well. It takes care of several issues at one time, but of course, by doing that, it does get expensive. No question.
Did your working group spend any time actually trying to understand how many square feet of open space the scouts need for their functions? Since the building they have now it's cool to say the current building was fit inside the open space, but what that says is maybe open space is going to be. So I'm curious, how much square footage do they really need for things that they use?
For indoor versus outdoor?
Correct. In other words, we've designed this really cool building, but it looks like it's really bigger than they currently need based on how they use it currently. Because they do things inside and outside. So on the inside things, how much square feet do we really need?
I would say some of the discussions we did have was if we could take the exact building and put it back over there. So we kind of merged that with the need for the community facility. Matthew mentioned 80 people. That was an estimation working with the architects. So 80 people would be a pretty big community meeting of any kind. The 80 people for 80 people in a city, it's actually kind of a scenario like this. It fits with what the footprint of the middle of the Scout Lodge is. For the Scouts themselves, they need about, I think the existing building is around 2,000. They actively use about 1,400 to 1,500 of it. The remaining is bathroom, storage, kitchen. So the larger size through our working groups was kind of a meld between what needs to make it bigger, the use of it being a community facility or what the Scouts need. And the community facility having 80 people is a good starting point of what we're talking about. But we have already discussed that footprint is going to be adjusted when we move to final design.
I think it needs to be looked at as to how the buildings will be used. A meeting of 80 people sitting around tables is, that's a huge lot. Even the meetings that we have with the mayor, manager meetings, and all the staff. So yes, we do.
I've never been here for one before, you may have known.
What's that?
I've never been here for a mayor's manager's meeting for parking.
Well, we hold them all.
But in others, yes, sir,
We don't have.
no, sir, we don't have any people, that's correct. I would agree.
So I think we need to take a look at the size of the open space to make sure that we're not creating something that's way too big, which will make it way more difficult for us to afford to build.
Didn't we discuss though about basically making the outside arbors bigger and making the big room smaller?
Yes,
Basically moving the walls in?
moving the walls. And this is,
Not really good. Everything. It's that you're driving a huge amount of square footage in that open room. And if you're paying 250, 500, whatever this thing is, it's.
If I may interrupt,
go ahead, Diego.
Council member, Mr. Mayor. So the north wall that hosts the sliding doors and the south wall entry can be pushed in to shrink the space, and both of the masses of the restroom and the storage spaces can be shrunken by being pushed inward and towards the lodge. This was designed to be flexible as such, so that we can shrink down the space should it be too large. This, what is being proposed, is the absolute max that would be usable space. So from here comes the next stage of the design, is just to fine tune it to make it more reasonable as we're discussing now. So as we see on the screen, if we take the storage and the garage spaces and the restrooms and push them towards the center, we can easily knock out about 400 square feet in just pushing those two in by about 5 to 10 feet. The space usability would still be functionally the same. It'll just be slightly smaller. So you end up kicking off a few square feet doing so.
The vice mayor's comment about how this project started is absolutely accurate. We were not anticipating spending more than $1 million. We were anticipating spending less than $500,000, probably $200,000 to move the building. And it's gotten that the project is kind of taking on a normal government path where it went from a relatively simple idea to really fine idea, but I don't know if we can afford it. So we need to be very careful as we work on this design to see what really needs to be built and what's it going to cost. Councilman Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we go back to that football thing? What I want to look at is, if you notice, we have restrooms for the quote scout lodge portion of this whole thing. There's two smaller ones in the middle. But now you're making a women's and men's restroom that accommodates the greater outdoors.
It's for the park.
I understand that, but we don't have restrooms that big for any park now.
I would guess not.
Okay, because you're showing 5 stalls for the women and 2, 4, 5 stalls for men. We have 2. I'm just surprised that it would be that big. Plus, that's just for the park. That is not for the scouts they have their own. So I mean, there's ways to tweak this, and you can always value engineering. Yeah. And so there are some things that you might want to look at to try to get this closer to some kind of look.
Absolutely.
I do want to address that. That's a great point. We actually spent a lot of time discussing about needs, talking with city departments, knowing that sporting events occur here. And so these are more of a reaction to a surge going to that, 2 to 3 football games, soccer games. But you're exactly right. We can do the same thing with 3 stalls.
We also have bathrooms.
I'm not sure what the kids are.
Still,
Yeah, bathrooms, that-
So I mean, there's also, as far as 80 people in one room, you have this space, you have space over at the community church, you have space at the Episcopal church. There's a lot of spaces that can accommodate 80 people, a lot. There are spaces that can accommodate 80 people. It doesn't have to be Scout Lock. You know, if you wanted to just do something.
So in this design, preliminary design process, ES is proposing, are they gonna be doing this as part of this, or are they just gonna take what they've got, finalize?
They will be implementing these comments. That's one of the purposes of this meeting, is to group councils and other stakeholders, if you will, and incorporate comments from that. So there will be additional changes.
Why don't we direct our architects, shrink it down and bring it back? Seems to be the consensus to me.
I'll be happy to chat with them if you want to sit down. Great, put together a meeting on something.
So they-
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilman Brandon Watson.
I have a question. Looking at the rendering that you had up just a minute ago, Diego, are the restrooms that the scouts will be using handicapped accessible? Because they sure looked a lot smaller.
Yes, Councilwoman, your question is about accessibility. This building is designed to all standards of the ADA. Everything will be easily accessible by anyone with a disability.
Okay.
Councilman Donahue.
So how much smaller does this need to go to make it affordable? I mean, I didn't do the math, but
It,
you know, how,
well, we'd have to get back to you with those numbers, but we could definitely shrink it down by, I would say, 500 to 700 square feet total, and that should bring us down a significant amount. Keith, does that sound right to you?
The main building itself, to lose 500 to 700 square feet brings us in the realm of the budget for that. Now, the bathrooms, we're trying to look at kind of separate as a park amenity. So if we can keep that, we're going to build it currently, but look at it as two pieces. So bringing the Scout Lodge down is 500 to 700 square feet. We'll start bringing that cost over. So
And we need the right size of the bathrooms too. If we can, if 3 stalls is enough, we don't need to build 5. That just gets 2 more stalls to be vandalized.
I was just thinking about the Boy Scouts, because in those meetings, like Paul said, this was a little bit of a wish list, but certainly they want to have what they had prior, at least that. And then of course the storage space, but they obviously were the main participants in providing info for this.
Councilman Watson.
I also had one more question, and it may have been said already. How much larger is the meeting space than the current lodge, just the gathering space?
So
the gathering space, go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, so the gathering space currently in the lodge is about 1,600 square feet. So this one's about 300 square feet larger. But this is also including a kitchen and a Scoutmaster office, which add up to another 300. So it's about 600 square feet larger for just the lodge meeting space.
Yeah, you know, as a former teacher, there's some, when you get too big a space, it gets hard to supervise. So there's some benefit to keeping it smaller and more intimate.
The proposed space is about 1947 square feet. The current open space is the current Scout Lodge. The overall building is about 2,100 square feet. It's about 1,450 of it. So we're about 400 bigger this proposed in just that middle
there.
Of the 1.2 that we're talking about right now, how much of that is park bathrooms? Can you break that part out so that give us an idea of the difference between money spent for bathrooms in the park versus the park?
while he's figuring that, we can certainly look at freestyle versus. Another thing you may have noticed there is a family versus marriage. That's a little bit between this type of things about having families. And
140 roughly.
on the park, stream, 140 grand.
We're getting economies of scale with the building as one. That might go up a little bit for it's separately standalone. That would go up
But
to
in
15.
1.2, so the property should have a lot for the facility that's going to be a huge facility outside.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. The ultimate plan that has been presented to us is a phenomenal plan. I mean, it looks like a great facility. I think the question though is, are we building a scout replacement facility or are we building a community facility? And if we're building a community facility, then what's been presented probably works. If we're building just a scout facility, which I thought was the original concept, we've kind of gone overboard with just a scout facility. So do we need a public facility? These bathrooms that have been designed in here also, how do they work with the new city center park and the people that we're attempting to bring into that park with all of our festivals and stuff? Is this the kind of bathroom that we need for that? Or is there going to be a bathroom like this? I don't think I've seen a bathroom nearly this nice at City Park. Have these been coordinated together somehow?
Mr. Vice Mayor, several different questions, several different answers there, sir.
Matthew, when you talk, would you slow down just a little bit so we can understand you? You're talking faster than the internet can process your voice. So we're getting garbles in about every third word, okay? Go ahead.
Mr. Vice Mayor, can you hear me better now, sir?
I can hear you, yes.
I would thank you for blaming the internet, though I suspect it's just me, not the internet, but I'll take it. So thank you.
It's your accent, yeah.
Yes, sir. That being said, so you brought up several questions. I think there's several answers there. So one, I would tell you that I do think we need a community meeting space that's the city's, just because right now we don't have one really that's ours. We don't have a meeting space that we get to use. There's multiple meetings that we have, such as the mayor's managers meetings, such as the West Valley managers meetings, where we end up renting rooms in other places because we don't have one. For example, when we have the all-employee meeting, we do it at Sowers Hall, and Sowers Hall is a great facility, but we do it because we don't have a space big enough ourselves. I do think that's something that we need. So that's one argument. Also, there's the question of rebuilding a lodge. The city attorney can chime in here if I'm wrong. I don't think we can legally build a building just for the scouts. I think that would get us into a bad situation quickly, because it's too easy for another organization to say, you built a building for the scouts, where's mine? Granted, there's history there, obviously, that this building was built for the scouts. We were taking it away. So we need to put something back. I realize that. But I do think there has to be a balance there between a community facility use and also scouts. I think we have to balance that out. And I think that balance is we use it for civic groups, school groups, city groups, but not birthday parties. I do think there's a balance that can be made there on that question. Keith, did you have a comment here on which one was? I didn't. Okay. What Keith was just saying, sir, was that based off his numbers, he figures that the scout portion of this building, what the scouts would use, would be about $500,000 of the 1.25. Am I understanding that correctly, Keith?
Of which we still would have use of, but that would be what we would call designated towards their specific use.
Okay. So what he's talking about there is designated scout areas, such as one thing the scouts requested currently they have storage area in there now that's per branch or per group, however you want to say it. So we wanted to do the same thing in New Scout Lodge, that they would have an area for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, separate storage areas. They also requested that the trailers be stored indoors. I had some doubts on that one, to be honest myself. I'm not real crazy about paying to store trailers. I think there are some money that could be, there's ways we could block those in and make them safe where they can't be stolen without it being in a covered climate controlled area. So I think that's an easy way that we can work on a number right there, just on that aspect alone. Does that help address your question, sir?
You're telling me climate controlled, the garages are going to be air conditioned?
Key says they're not, so they're just covered.
Okay.
I could see them being walled in, not be covered personally. The issue there is them worry about those trailers growing legs. There's ways of having them inside walls without having them being covered. So that would be a way to work on that number if we want to see the number come down. Again, I think from what I'm hearing, I think we take this back to architects. We shrink this building down by a good bit, whatever a good bit number is to be determined, and bring it back to you guys for further consideration. Would be my recommendation at this time.
I would also suggest that you beat up your engineers and architects for your over $50 a foot for design fees just to design this thing. That's massively premium.
I'm going to refer to my engineer sitting here beside me on that one. He would have a better familiarity with that than I would. Chief.
This was discussed, Mr. Vice Mayor, that we had a discussion of this, and I've talked to the architects and actually specifically EPS. There are a lot of, I'm going to summarize it by saying there are a lot of unknowns. And when it comes to unknowns, and Mr. Woody Scouten can attest to this, sometimes the price goes up. So we wanted to get to a point here and discuss things like that we are working out right now before we get too far into the unknowns. That price is subjective to what we know now versus what we're going to know versus into the final design phase. I obviously come from the private side, so I'm familiar with these, and I have had a lot of discussions with our engineer on what we're doing from this point forward. I am going to tell you now that I will manage that budget very tightly, and I will revisit it after the discussion we've had tonight.
Great, thank you.
So when you bring something back, you need to bring with analysis of the size of the open space.
Mayor.
Just one second. So instead of just saying this is the space that we've got for building, we want to know how's it going to get used and why does it need to be this size? So don't make it too small. So we end up spending $1 million and instead of having a building that's not very usable, but don't make it so large that it's hard for us to budget. Councilman Donahue.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say to all this is that we certainly only have one chance to do this and to do it right. So I would think you have to go back and talk to the Boy Scouts again as well, because much of this was directed by them. And I agree with some of what Matthew said. I think there'd be a great use of this. So if half of this budget is with the Boy Scouts to replace Scout Lodge, and then we have to put in a little bit more because we're using it. So I mean, my opinion, so much for my yaysayers and naysayers, we're not the naysayers. I know we are mandated to do the right thing, but I certainly hope that we talk to all the people again.
Now, I'm not sure we're going to expand the process to go back and revisit with every person we talked to.
No, I get that. It was by committee.
We have their input, and now as a council, we have to figure out what is it that we can possibly afford to build that will be a benefit to our community, which includes the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. So that's our responsibility. So that's the process we're involved in right now. So for you to take it back, do you need us to table it or just pull it out and table it? Yeah, but we don't have a date certain because we don't know how long it's going to take to redo this.
On a motion to table, it technically comes back at the next regularly scheduled meeting, so that would be in September.
All right. So we have a motion to table. We have a motion to table this item which is item 10C from our regular agenda. We'll table this until our next regularly scheduled council meeting. So, for a second, any discussion on the motion?
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Just real quick, you know, this conversation about cutting the size down 500 square feet. If it's $300 a foot, we've been quoted to build the building, it's only $150,000. If that affects the usability of the building for a lot of other functions, cutting it down 500 feet doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to get the cost of the building down, there's a lot of very, very expensive architectural features in this building, the way it's designed. Maybe looking at those, there's a whole lot of bathroom stalls in there that are very expensive, each one to put in. Maybe those we need to have an understanding of what we're building in the city center from a bathroom standpoint, and whether these bathrooms are going to be needed for the city center festivals. And if so, then maybe that's how we also justify building all these stalls in this building sitting here. Like I don't remember what we were doing over at City Center for restroom facilities, but we will have, you know, this park available for overflow for who knows, maybe RVs or the vendors or something. And they're not that far apart. So I think we need a little bit of understanding why we're putting in 14, 15 bathroom fixtures in this little building.
Mr. Vice Mayor, on your concern about city events, there is a totally separate restroom that's planned for Litchfield Square for the park in the middle. To be honest, I don't think it's fair to call this overflow for city events, because I think that would have a huge impact on the neighborhoods. I suspect the neighborhoods, the homes that have been there a long time around Scout Park wouldn't like that, because that would be a big change. I think it's fine to say these are restrooms for the park, and there may be some overflow from events, but we hope that most of the event people in Litchfield Square use the restrooms that are in Litchfield Square, that they aren't going to this one. Some might naturally, but if they do that, they're crossing a street that's going to get busier. And again, there may very well be a parking garage between Litchfield Square and Scout Park eventually. So while some people may use it, I don't think it would be much overflow. I don't think it'd be fair to give it credit for that. But there is a separate restroom plan for the park.
I'd like to see these fixtures moved into a city center where they're more centralized and more useful. The 10 plus maybe 12, 14 total, fixtures in this little bitty building. And that one park makes no sense. We're building parks with 2 fixtures in them. So maybe you've got 2 inside for the scouts and 2 outside for the park. That's a significant cost. Each one of those fixtures, those holes, they're expensive. We look at what we paid for that stainless steel fixtures we put in one of the bathrooms, just a toilet and a sink. It was tens of thousands of dollars for the stainless. They were theoretically vandal proof, and they were vandalized. This needs to be looked at a little closer. And like I say, I would be in favor, if you're going to build all these bathrooms, put them in city center. We don't need that many holes in this little park.
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I may, the current city park bathrooms have 5 stalls for women, 3 stalls for men, and with 2 urinals and 1 family restroom. We adaptive architects were involved in the design process for those restrooms, and we use that as a footprint to start the process here. Just for reference, we took what was built there, or what will be built there, what was already approved, and put that here and modified it. We can shrink it and it'll make sense. However, we were looking at the size of the events and the amount of people that show up, and a lot of these situations you have to plan for the higher amount of overflow coming in from all the different events. That's what my understanding was from what was happening in the park. So we can definitely look at shrinking the restrooms, But in my opinion, it would be a little uncomfortable to bring that down to only 2 stalls, since there will be a lot of people using that space.
Diego, you're designing the restroom for the park as well, aren't you?
Correct.
For Litchfield Square. How many,
Correct.
top of your head, how many stalls does that one have, you know?
Yes, that's what I was talking about earlier, was the 5 stalls for women, 3 stalls for men with 2 urinals, and 1 family restroom that has a children's toilet and an adult toilet.
So they're very similar, very similar models is what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
What did we just put in Scout Park? Oh, not Scout Park. The one Camelback Park.
That I'm not familiar with, unfortunately.
Yeah. What do we, and did we just build, what we build in Turtle Park? The bathroom we put over there. This is a similar situation for the Scout Park.
Mr. Vice Mayor, Richard's here. He's saying that Camelback is 1 and 1, sir.
Exactly. And I think Turtle is also. Are those not working?
But they don't have Boy Scouts.
Boy Scouts are going to have bathrooms inside.
I didn't think so.
Yes, look at the plan.
I thought this was the bathrooms for the Boy Scouts too. No?
No, the bathroom.
There's inside restrooms for the Scouts, Councilmember Donahue.
Okay, my bad.
The outdoor restrooms are for the park. Now,
Gotcha.
hearing these concerns, so currently we're at 5. What if we brought it down to 2 or 3 and see where numbers goes there? Agree.
Yeah.
That's really the question. It's not just cutting, cut. We need to figure out how many do you really need. We have no restrooms that we're getting by at, at Scout Parks right now. We have, certainly there's certain times of the day, certain days of the week, there's a lot of kids playing soccer, but then that's very, very small amount of the overall use and time of that park. So you just need to do some work on what do you really need, not just what it looks nice on this paper.
The densities of these bathrooms, assume let's call it a gold-plated version of what those fully needs would be. There are minimal uses that we can visit.
Minimal, I think, is a bad word. We need to put in what we need. We don't want to be, it's not minimal, but it's how many do you really need? And we know in our other parks, we do not need 5 bathrooms. We have 1 stall for men and 1 stall for women, typically. And sometimes maybe there's 2. We can take a look at the usages that we know about in our own system and look at Scout Park and see how many do we really need.
Mayor and Council, we can certainly go back and look at shrinking the building down based on need, based on use by the Scouts, based on use by the park, see where we are, and bring it back to you for further discussion. But before we go further, let me ask you. So this was to request council funding for a preliminary design. So can you move further with what I'm asking?
Currently, our design consultants are operating after 1 call. So what we request here is to move into the preliminary design phase where we can start working with actual survey and start putting real pencils to paper. We can continue off of the on-call in this preliminary fashion, bring the revised version back. This preliminary design brought us more into a final design structure. So this was a 2-part presentation. Present the current design and ask for approval, preliminary design funding. We do have, fortunately, EPS group and their architectural consultant is operating off the budget. That is, I don't want to say it's open-ended if we want it to be, but it doesn't have to fund scope. That's what this proposal is.
But we can be working on all this as the architects. All right, that's the check and make sure.
All right, is there any further discussion on motion to table this item? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so this is tabled until our next regularly scheduled council meeting, which we anticipate will be September. All right. Next item is consideration of a zoning code text amendment. Mr. Sanks, do you have a report for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members, city staff. Yes, the request tonight is to approach the city council to request an initiation to guide staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission to proceed with the work needed to amend the zoning district, city center zoning district, per direction we've gotten verbally, I believe, through members of the staff that are working with Litchfield Square. And I have a brief PowerPoint I'd like to share my screen with you really quick. So you should be able to see my screen now. It's just a splash page for the presentation. We were advised to look at primarily related to the permitted uses within City Center. And so I'm going to start that now. As a reminder, the district purpose. And so when we go to amend the district related to permitted uses or any other changes, we always have to relate back for legal purposes, especially what was the district's purpose in the first place. And that is to promote pedestrian-oriented commercial and civic core activities that include ground-level retail shops, restaurants, government and professional offices, public parks, and plazas. So what we were approached with was the concern related primarily to two types of uses that could, from a logistical standpoint, cause issues within Litchfield Square primarily. And those are religious institutions and schools. Generally speaking, they're considered a sensitive land use. And that could preclude entertainment venues or uses such as bars from locating within Litchfield Square or in close proximity to them. Further, we were asked to look more carefully at the definition of a smoke lounge, and I talked more in the report about it in long form related to the advent of so many different types of, quote, smoke lounges. What could be considered a smoke lounge in the last 20 years has vastly expanded to include hookah bars, cannabis oil type sales as a primary use, vape shops, and also to further clarify that recreational and medical marijuana dispensing and sales is separately defined and regulated, and as you know, only allowed in industrial districts like Monument Point. On top of all this, it's a separate issue besides looking at prospective restricting uses of religious institutions and schools from city center zoning. We've talked about this many years past. You may recall in conversations with Susan Goodwin about the concept of an entertainment district that would overlay the downtown area property, whether that's limited to the CTR district, which is the city-owned property, or if it would include other nearby properties as well. The concern being particularly regarding liquor licensing separation requirements, so that a bar, for example, needs to be at least 300 feet away from a church, a school, or other sensitive land use, primarily churches and schools. Now, other cities have done restrictions on or done entertainment districts as an overlay, and I'll come to that in a moment. This is the definition here, if you will, on the slide regarding smoke lounge. It's in your report. I believe you've probably already read it, but this is how we could provide some further definition, limiting a smoke lounge to its original intent of really being a tobacco or a cigar lounge rather than, vape shops and hookah bars and all these other types of uses. So we're looking at this. And again, we're just asking council tonight to, make a motion to initiate the process for a text amendment, not to actually approve the text tonight. That's for your reference. So since the report was posted in your packets last Thursday, Friday, we've continued to do research on what would entail an entertainment district and what might be the benefit of doing so. Again, circling back to this, and the Arizona revised statutes currently, this is verbatim from them, advise that the governing body of a city or town on a case-by-case basis may approve an exemption from the distance restrictions prescribed in this section, which is the 300 feet from a bar from a church or school, and that it's located in an area that is designated an entertainment district by the governing body of that city or town. Phoenix and other cities like Glendale have adopted entertainment districts for the purpose of allowing alcohol sales in locations like bars to be located through this exemption and with your discretionary approval, less than 300 feet away from a church or public-private school. Some details for you to consider, that bars already require use permit in CTR, so you have discretionary approval over bars in the district. An entertainment district is actually adopted by separate resolution and would include an associated map showing the boundaries of the district, so it doesn't have to be just CTR. So entertainment district is not an amendment to the CTR district. It's actually an overlay adopted by resolution that would be parked on top of whatever land area you want to be in that entertainment district. Separately, the CTR text amendment that we discussed in terms of perhaps restricting uses and modifying the definition of a smoke lounge, that would be adopted by ordinance. I wanted to give you a map reference. For example, the Phoenix Entertainment District map covers their downtown area. It basically loosened up the separation requirements and gave the city discretion and flexibility to locate bars and churches within closer proximity on a case-by-case basis. And then next to it, I put the Litchfield Park City Center area. In the red boundary is the CTR zone district. It's all currently city property, owned property. Then you've got the church at Litchfield Park. That's one of our concerns right now, is that anything in Litchfield Square would, within 300 feet of that church, would have difficulty in obtaining a liquor license based on current law. And last, of course, the existing shops and restaurants along Old Litchfield Road. Those are separately zoned neighborhood commercial with a planned development overlay. You may wish to consider adoption of a resolution at some point in time to include any or all of the properties shown in that graphic, just to give you the discretion on being able to locate a bar somewhere in Litchfield Square in that close proximity, in particular to the church at Litchfield Park. So I wanted to hand you this information. It's still a little fresh. Apologize it wasn't in your report already, but we've been working on this so that you could have it tonight. The recommended motion, this is slightly modified from your staff report based on this additional information, would be a move to direct staff to initiate a text amendment to the zoning ordinance section 27C City Center zoning district related to use limitations and consideration of an entertainment district, excuse me for the typo, for the city center area. I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions for council? Dr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, do we know where you measure from and to on 300 feet from the church? Is it the property or is it the building or what is?
To the mayor, councilman Romack, that's a great question. I was reading on that today. I'll have to double back on it if it's basically wall to wall or property line to property line. I should have had that information handy, but I will check. My concern was that it was to the property line, because the use on the church property could extend to its property line rather than just the building itself. So you could have, the congregation or others on the property and put close proximity to a bar. But I'll double check that for you.
Well, one of the things that does do, Jason, is it really kind of limits some of the things that can go in on those buildings directly. I'd say probably more directly to the south of the church. Yeah, than to the west. To the west, they have quite a bit of other stuff going on back there.
To the mayor, Councilmember Romack, I actually did a distance location, and so the actual church's location based on distance, even building to building only, not even property line to property line, would impact some of the buildings within Lot 3. But you're right, it is actually closer to the lots to the south across the Village Parkway extension. So it would impact both sides.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from council? Yes, Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Gels, one thing I feel like we should be aware of is that the Church of Litchfield Park will be requesting a variance to build the zero lot line before BOA. So that does affect this project somewhat, and that both parties need to understand that. If the city's requesting to make an entertainment district, it does allow us to build bars closer. But also the church is requesting to build the zero lot lines. They're not going to build it now. It might be 10, 20 years from now, but they are requesting the ability to do that. Litchfield Square allows to build the zero lot lines. So I think just both sides of this coin need to be understood, is that this does give us more abilities to build certain businesses here, which is a good thing for us. But of course, if the church is moving closer to their lot line too, that does affect this conversation. That has not been voted on yet or discussed yet, but it's something to be aware of because it does affect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, City Manager. Just to clarify too, you're right that they are going to public hearing on August 4th for requests to reduce their setback on both the west and the south property line and that southwest corner to 0 from 20 feet.
Thank you, Jesse.
So at this point, what staff is asking us to do is to direct them to work on the text. Once they get it written, and we have something to look at, and to work on whether an independent district is feasible. Part of that process is working with the church. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to move this along with that authority to go work on these projects. And then we'll move it back. So, any further discussion on this item? If not, is there a motion to direct staff to initiate a text amendment to the zoning ordinance related to use limitations and direct staff to consider adopting or proposing an entertainment district for the city center zoning? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is adopted. Next item of business is an amendment to Litchfield Square covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. A lot has happened since February of 2020 when the council first adopted these CCRs for Litchfield Square. So we felt it was a good idea to revisit them and to add some things in to address some of the questions and items like the CFD that have occurred. You have them in your packet. You don't have the version that's highlighted, which was the one that I intended to put in your packet. So let me just run through the highlights real quick, the things that we've changed. So again, we mentioned that we now have a CFD in Litchfield Square and define what that is. We've added a list of prohibited uses, which is in the appendix or exhibit B to the CCRs. I'm not going to go through all 62 of those, but there are things that we deemed would not be appropriate for Litchfield Square. We talk about, again, with the CFD, we talk about the fact that there will be a tax levy that will be collected through the county assessor's office. So basically acknowledging to future owners that the CFD exists and there will be a tax. We are now requiring that all business employees park in either parking garages or parking lots behind or to the side of the buildings. So the idea is to preserve those parking spaces that are on the streets in front of the buildings for the customers only. Because we expect these sidewalks to be very busy in front of the stores, we are prohibiting bicycles, human-powered bicycles, but also skateboards, neighborhood electric vehicles, golf carts, a whole slew of motorized things that we just don't think would be appropriate to have on the sidewalk. So those have been prohibited. We are allowing, though, that Richard or other folks who need to use the sidewalks for maintenance or so on can do that. And if a company who's housed in Litchfield Square wants to close the sidewalk for an event, we can consider doing that. I added in some things about building enhancements. One of the things that we're really encouraging for the buildings in Litchfield Square are overhangs and canopies over the sidewalks. That's one of the things that we heard from the public was that they wanted a lot of shade. So we're encouraging the designers of the projects to, as they come in, to do that. And we're providing process in the CCRs for them to have an easement for that private structure to be mounted or located over our public sidewalk. We're also encouraging outdoor dining, and we already have a way to address that in our code. But again, this is a way of reinforcing it for the restaurants who want to locate in Litchfield Square. And I also added something about exterior wall art. And this came out of some discussions that we've had with the council over the past several months. That it might be nice to have some murals on the relatively blank walls that are the side walls of these buildings. So the fronts are going to be the window dressing and the doors and everything. With the side walls, especially where we have pedestrian access walkways between the buildings, could be used for that kind of thing, the murals or maybe some kind of um, some historical art placement or something. So we're allowing that, or allowing the city as a declarant in this case, to be able to do that. And the owner of the building will not unreasonably withhold their permission to do that. And I think that's it. That's all I have, man.
These things, always change for discuss the team and board.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Any questions or discussion on the changes to the CC norms? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Two questions. The sidewalk use for any kind of reason, whether it's restaurants or goods display or something like that, as opposed to given just an absolute approval, should we not consider that maybe as a special use permit type of item?
Yes, instead of just giving absolute approval on sidewalk use, should we do it through a special use process?
Yes.
We can't understand. Yeah.
Yes, the outdoor dining part of it is covered in our code, so we have a process for that. And, it requires them to submit a plan. Obviously, we can't have them block the entire sidewalk, so that has to be reviewed and approved by staff. In the case of canopies, basically, we're giving them an easement. The easement will talk about their requirement to maintain them in a safe and good looking manner, workmanlike manner.
Is that a special use permit also, or what is that? Is it a right to do that?
Does the canopy require a special use permit for that?
I'll have to ask Jason that question. I don't know if it requires a use permit or not.
I would just be concerned to giving them an absolute right to use the sidewalks and to cover the sidewalks without us then having any ability to regulate it.
Mr. Vice Mayor, Jason, do you mind weighing in on this, or?
No,
No,
certainly
we're putting you on the
don't
spot
mind.
there.
Thank you, City Manager, through the Mayor, Vice Mayor Faith. No, there's not a current use permit requirement for a private developer to cantilever over the city right of way. I think I'm not aware of it being in the zoning ordinance. If, as Woody said, an easement can be granted to that property owner to use cantilever over that sidewalk, I think the conditions and terms would be stated in that, either the easement language or some sort of an indemnification issue in case something were to happen to the cantilevered structure and fall on the sidewalk or something like that were to happen. This is standard in like downtown areas where you might have ornate signs or shade structures or other types of structures cantilevering over right of way.
Okay, so we're not being asked to approve any of that now. All you're asking for is just the prohibited items.
This is just a change to CCNR to regulate the uses themselves. We're going to need to adopt ordinances that are similar to the ordinance that we have on outdoor dining. So we'll have to adopt a regulatory scheme for it. This just permits it through the CCNR.
Okay. The second question I had was the prohibition of bicycles and golf carts and whatever on the sidewalks. Are we differentiating in the plan between sidewalks and cart paths? Because we do have ordinances that differentiate.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, yes, there are no pathways in Litchfield Square. They're all sidewalks.
Doesn't there have to be a pathway to connect the pathway that goes in front of the rec center to the pathway that goes behind the parking lot for the golf course?
Yes, and a golf cart or a bicycle that is on that pathway as they cross Wigwam Boulevard and enter Litchfield Square will need to be on the street.
We didn't design a cart path. We didn't connect our cart path in this plan.
No, I think one way to look at it is that Litchfield Square is the hub of the two cart paths that extend north, or pathways that extend north and south of Litchfield Square. The vast majority of the people who will be coming to Litchfield Square will not be coming in a golf cart or a bicycle.
The ones that do just what the conversation. The trends of those pathways, outdoor dining, outdoor shopping, the way that we participate in use of it, we really can't use that sidewalk as a pathway to driving it home. There's too much some film.
Mayor Schoaf.
Yes, Councilman Brent Watson.
I have a couple of concerns or questions. You know, in my mind's eye, I'm envisioning that people staying at the Wigwam might rent one of their bicycles and want to take it down here and just go spin around through the stores and get some lunch and, you know, spend a day down in what should be a real exciting place to be. And I don't know, at what point what do they do with a bicycle? I mean, you know, how do you, in a community that's been designed for bicyclists and for cart path usage, I think we need to take that into consideration somewhere. As the mother of a kid who skateboarded, I certainly understand let's not put skateboards down there. And I can understand that that's probably the admonition, but I think we need to figure out a way of incorporating something to allow people to use those modes of transportation and, you know, enjoy it. The other question I have when we talk about the cantilevered covering over the sidewalks is, if this is going to be used as dining space, much like what we have downtown right now, then it takes away the benefit of having the covered walkway. All of your people walking from store to store or restaurant to stores are now back out under the hot sun. So I'd like to see if there's some alternatives to, you know, I hope we wouldn't eat up all of that space and make it unfriendly to pedestrians and super friendly to restaurants.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Brainerd Watson, the answer to your first question is that, and I failed to mention this earlier, that we are providing bike lanes on the interior streets. So Village Parkway, Desert Avenue, Laloma Avenue, Honeysuckle Street will all have bike lanes. So coming from the Wigwam or somewhere else in a bicycle, you'll be able to use the bike lane until you find one of the numerous bike racks that are located throughout Litchfield Square. You can lock up your bike and then walk. And that's really it.
Aren't the sidewalks designed to be wider? We've got areas for the trees and we've got areas for trees. And with the shape of a variety of features.
Yeah, so the streets are designed with 20-foot wide sidewalks from the parking area to the face of the building. And along the dividing line between the sidewalk and the parking, there will be street trees. So those trees will be providing shade, depending on the time of the day, for at least a portion of the sidewalk. And then the canopies or overhangs will take care of the rest of it.
I think brings up a pretty good point. If the restaurants that have taken on the sidewalk now, they take up most of the sidewalks, and certainly any of the shaded spaces. If we're going to do the property line in front of the building, then cantilever out over common area, but maybe you get 10 feet tables within 10 feet that you can't, you know, and so I'm sure that there's
all of that stuff. Right. Yeah. This is just a property, favor on something we're reporting of this property to permit it. Now we're gonna regulate it through ordinance. You can't regulate it.
Right, I'm just to be kind of the idea that this was talking about.
We got 20 feet.
20 feet.
However, some, there's
And there-
no place for golf carts.
I would point out that the CCNRs do require that you get an encroachment permit, and there is it just allows for it. There's an additional process to be able to get it approved.
Okay. We have to put together our ordinance, our process. To be able to
What are you gonna do?
I don't know, I've had time. All right. Any more questions about the CCNRs? Councilman Donahue.
When you were talking about golf carts, weren't we going to do sort of an angle parking situation for golf carts? We talked about that at one point. I know some people do that downtown now, and it makes brilliant sense. Take one parking spot and you can get two golf carts, but that's not necessarily designed in there.
Angle parking design and their places designed for golf carts. Well,
Yes, Councilman Donahue, yes, we do have angle parking for cars and also for narrower spots, which can be used by golf carts, motorcycles, scooters.
Gotcha. Thank you.
full service. Any other questions or comments on the CCNRs? If not, is there a motion to approve the amended and restated covenants, conditions, and restrictions for the city center and direct the city clerk to record the amended and restated covenants, conditions, and restrictions with the Maricopa County Recorder's Office? Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion by council? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Next item is design plans for lot 3 in Litchfield Square. Jason Sands, you have a report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members, staff, and I believe the applicant may be present in person. This is exciting. We have our first private lot development request for lot 3, just north of the city center park within Litchfield Square. This item went to the design review board earlier this month and was being brought to you with a recommendation of approval from the design review board, subject to conditions that were presented by staff and subsequently modified by the design review board through the course of their meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that all the projects that are private development projects in the city go to the design review board, except that in city center, there's special provision that ultimate approval is with the city council. And that's what we did when we adopted the city center zoning district. So that's why everything will be brought to you. I'm going to go ahead and share screen. This will be the fun part. And I promise not to go into as much detail as the staff report. I loaded the staff report up with all the details you might want, but I'll try to go through this a little bit more quickly and get to the items that I believe everybody wants to see, and that are the exhibits. So let me just toggle over to my PowerPoint and we'll get started. All right, so you should be on the splash page of the PowerPoint. Again, lot 3 for design review for city council. It's presented to you for information and action tonight with a prospective recommendation for approval by accepting the design review board application. So let me start with the locational reference. It's located north of the city center park and south of the existing Scout Lodge, and it's located west of the church at Litchfield Park. Here's the proposed Black Lane site plan. I know it's not really illustrative, but it is the technical requirements of the design review board application to submit this so that we can verify setbacks, building location, parking, etc., as well as access points. Just to kind of recount its locational reference, you can kind of see that in this baby aerial here in the slide prior. We have an extension of La Loma Avenue occurring here that'll terminate in a private drive that goes into the parking area. We have buildings located here, building on the west side. This is the West Village Parkway extension that will go past Desert Avenue, extend along the south side of the church at Litchfield Park and connect to Old Litchfield Road. So we've got a combination of 1- and 2-story mixed use buildings here. It's restaurant, retail, and office. And you can see it's approximately 40,000 square feet of new commercial space in Litchfield Square on Lot 3 as proposed. These are the building elevations in two-dimensional format that have been modeled after largely by Butler Design Group after other projects downtown, including the Church of Litchfield Park, the elementary school, Cache development, Old Litchfield Road, commercial development, and even City Hall. And they presented that they brought all those kind of architectural elements together in their presented elevations. They presented three-dimensional renderings to really give you some scale and idea of what's going on here. And, we just talked on the prior, talking about the CCNRs and where there's street parking and not street parking. And just to kind of identify that this property, Lot 3, is located on a significant curve on West Village Parkway. And it's not safe in this location to put street parking with cars backing out onto a curved road. So it's just this unique stretch north of the park where we'll have a curved road and not have street parking. So that's why the street is going to look different than it will elsewhere in Litchfield Square when you see those projects come forward. So this would be facing north from City Center Park across West Village Parkway, and I call it the extension since it's being built. And you can see here these kind of single level elements here with outdoor dining spaces for prospective restaurant space, a centralized courtyard space here for gathering and entry into the project, the interior portion of the project, and then bookended by perhaps what might be another restaurant space on the east side. And then if you look over here as these palms extend over where my mouse would be hovering, that's where the Church of Litchfield Park would be in close proximity to this project. You'll see 1- and 2-story elements, which are desired by the design elements. We went through great lengths to get to the design elements that are adopted by city code. It's all listed in your staff report in case you want to get into the details. I'll try to spare you some of those, but we've already vetted the project against those design elements, and line item by line item of those design elements, we presented those to the design review board at their meeting this month. So just to show where they conformed and where we thought they could do some improving. One thing you will not see tonight, just to be clear, is you will not see a landscape plan, nor will you see site design elements such as the exact fixtures for lighting, seat benches, landscape walls, those sorts of things. We anticipate that Butler Design Group will submit those as kind of a second application, maybe to go directly to the design review board for approval, or if the council so wishes, we'll bring even the landscape plan back to council for final approval. That could be perhaps part of your prospective motion tonight. So this is a bird's eye view looking back down, kind of the same vantage point that I just showed you on the prior slide, but if you were to like jump up in the air about 40 feet, look down at the project, you can see here on the left would be the restaurant patio. Clearly the tables are located there. Over there would be another restaurant patio. Now, remember, these patrons here, these diners will be looking out across at this sidewalk that hugs and is curb separated with trees from Village Parkway's extension. And then the park will be on the other side of this. So these people will be dining, looking across the street at the City Center Park. This gathering space here is, you can look in the back, those will be some retail shops, perhaps with some office above. We did express a little concern to the applicant, Mr. Hurth, in terms of, what types of shops might be viable or successful when they don't have, they're not hugging Village Parkway, they're tucked back inside the center. And he mentioned in the design review board hearing that those are the types of shops that might be somewhat of a destination retail place where you don't have to have the curb appeal of passing by on Village Parkway to see them and go patronize them like an ice cream shop, but rather they'd be other types of users. So we did identify that as a concern, but the applicant was confident in their ability to lease that space to the type of users that maybe don't need the immediate visibility right off the road. These are some more perspective renderings. So when you're kind of within the center, this is looking now west on the sidewalk. If you were to see over to the left, that would be where Village Parkway would be. And we're facing kind of north into the middle portion of the project where there's actually an archway, and where those people are congregated here. If you were to walk through there, that would go to the parking area that's on the north side of these proposed buildings. This is the restaurant that would be on the west side of the project, the outdoor dining, and then of course this is the 2-story element of the building set back towards the north. This is looking now east again, so this would be what I call restaurant number 1, or candidate restaurant number 1. You can see a 2nd-story element up here that's likely to be office or secondary commercial space. We even have an outdoor patio proposed possibly up there where you can see this umbrella proposed. Again, the design elements seek to have, activate spaces on both the ground level and secondary levels in city centers, so bring some life to the area. And BDG is fulfilled those design element purposes with this design. Again, if you were to walk along this sidewalk, that would ultimately take you past the church at Litchfield Park on the south side of the church and over to Old Litchfield Road. And this is just kind of turning around, looking back to the west again. Village Parkway would be on the left. And this would be looking west across the majority frontage of the project, where you would see restaurant number 1 here on the right with patrons, the congregating area in the middle, and then restaurant number 2 over on the other side on the west side. Close-up view of how you would bring pedestrians in. The staff were initially concerned that we didn't have that 20-foot sidewalk experience occurring along Village Parkway, but Mr. Scouten reminded myself and the design review board as well that because of the curb in West Village Parkway, we actually won't have parking there anyways. So the curb separated sidewalk with the trees is intended to funnel people to cross into lot 3 at the intersections where there are controlled points of access, so people could safely cross into the site and not be, tempted to run across the street mid-block where it might not be safe on the curb. So rather focus people in to cross, let's say over here at this intersection point, and then to come into the project, they could go on either La Loma or Desert, or they would walk down the sidewalk and enter the project here into the centralized portion of it, and then peel off to the left or the right to the shops or the restaurants. This is just turning around again on our heel and looking east again, back towards the restaurant over here, and then what would be the church at Litchfield Park beyond that, what you wouldn't see, but it's over there for locational reference. This is getting up inside the courtyard. Remember, I noted the shops earlier that are tucked back into the courtyard, facing to these would be facing to the south, and then Village Parkway and the City Center Park would be located. If you're staring at the picture, it would be to your right, to the south. These would be the shops that are tucked in the back in the centralized courtyard area, bookended by these 2 restaurants with patios. This is the north elevation. So the parking area that is the actual parking area for the shopping center, or this lot 3 plus the overflow parking and prospective parking garage where Scout Lodge is currently located would be, I guess, if you're staring at this building, pretending you're standing here, it would be behind you, behind your back would be where that garage would be. The design review board expressed a little concern, at least but one of the board members, that this facade of the building felt a little flush, if you will, or a little not like the rest of the buildings. Like everything seems to be oriented away from this, and that we're looking at the kind of a broad side of the north face of the building. But the architect described that what you can't see so well here is that there are some pretty broad overhangs here, and that there is enough patio space here where some of these through retailers, you can see through the glass here where my mouse is, that some of these retailers would actually have tenant space that's the courtyard beyond, right? The courtyards we just looked at. So if you're on the north side parking and you could actually see through some of these spaces, someone could rent that or lease that space, or those spaces could be subdivided if the prospective tenants didn't need that much square footage. Again, feel free, of course, council, to comment on if there's any concerns with this elevation compared to the others that you've seen, but the applicant had an explanation for its somewhat sheer appearance. Staff identified 2 areas of a little bit of concern. We didn't know if the design was quite fully baked, and in the absence of having a site detail sheet and a landscape plan, we've got, I pressed a mouse button here, let me go back. So if you're coming from, this is the park, this is City Center Park, and these are the primary points of entry into lot 3 coming from the south, from the park. So let's say groups of people are attending events in the park, and they want to go north of Village Parkway and patronize these businesses, go out to eat at the restaurant or get some ice cream or whatever's in here. Our concern was the design elements for City Center are heavily focused on the pedestrian experience. What am I going to experience when I am downtown? What are we doing? Are we catching all the details and getting in front of these projects and not finding like an experience of what happened here? Why did they do something here? This is a focal point. So BDG, Butler Design Group, has advised us that their landscape plan that's forthcoming will detail out some things that could occur in this area and this area. So as you cross the street into the project, you're presented with something. You're presented like you have arrived at lot 3. And that all of this project will stitch together with other lots in the project. So you have a continuous downtown pedestrian experience, and you don't feel like you're in a series of isolated projects from one another. It's very important to do that. As you see, if you walk down an Old Town Scottsdale, or if you go down Mill Avenue, or other areas where we have these types of environments, you feel like this contiguous storefront restaurant experience, or maybe there's a park or a courtyard, but they all make sense and they all talk to each other. That's what we're looking to do here. We believe that the architect's intent is to provide us these details so that we have focal points and continuity of development and landscape hardscape form to stitch this project together, so it doesn't feel like it's all looking inwards to this courtyard, but not just looking inwards to this courtyard, but also activating these spaces where people will be arriving on foot. I'm already here at the recommended motion. This is basically the recommended motion that has come from the design review board after they took a whack at what staff presented, and we went through an hour process of going through the project at least. But I'd be happy to answer questions before we talk about any prospective recommended motion. I have all of the slides up. I can refer back and forth.
With questions, comments from council? Yes. Yeah, unless the applicant is here, so if you have questions of the applicant, we'd be happy to answer them.
So we have one loading zone, one loading space, one restaurants.
Yes, we have, well, right now, loading zone, you just see it there, but black, if we looked at the architecture, there's been multiple points of loading zones in there, so that better, but that black box is an area where we're holding, for both restaurants. Jeff, you're talking into the thing.
Yeah, you could place them.
Over here.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor. Yes, if you don't mind having an applicant come to the mic so those on Zoom can hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, so the loading zone, and thank you, council and mayor and staff for allowing me to be here tonight and talk. But the loading zone will be accessible in that black box area is what I'm trying to, yeah, right there. That's part of it, as well as to the left, right, straight down below it and to the left a little bit. Over there, yeah.
So the question for this is many, but 40. Or box truck for
not for a large, yeah, a large truck. It couldn't come. Yep.
Other questions or comments? It might be good if we do just the purpose of what we're trying to do at this design is not even finalized. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say it's the building footprint is designed. The basic features are designed, but yeah, we got about 80%.
It still has to go back to have an architect do all the work. Get it to a package that actually has some of the detail done. This is at a stage where we're being asked if this facade and this general set of buildings fit in with what we were trying to create in Neutral Square, but at a 30,000 foot level, not at the level of whether everything is totally functional yet, because it is design. So within, if there are comments or questions about how this fits in with what we're trying to create in Neutral Square, is this a project that appears to be something that will be beneficial to Neutral Square? But I think those would be very helpful to the other council members and
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Blainer Watson.
First of all, I just want to say I'm really excited to see this come to this stage and for us to be able to see the conceptual plan. And I also want to just comment that what appeared to be a purple Pacer station wagon on the rear view of the building was an interesting little note. Anyhow, but I'm glad to see it. It looks good. I like the design, basic design of it. It seems to me like it does fit in with what we've done in other areas and with our overall design scheme plan guidelines. And I'm looking forward to seeing it come back to us with a little more detail.
Any other comments from council? I have one comment that I'd like to get your reaction to.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have required in different developments, the most recent one is the cache development. And it was put into a development agreement, that's Camelback and Dicer. There's the idea of a four-sided architecture. So you don't have any of the sides that just kind of, block. And I'm wondering if the north side really satisfies that requirement. Is the architecture of the facade that's on the north side? I'm not sure that it is everything that I would like to see. And we want that exposure is what people are going to see basically when they're on Mitchell Road coming south. They're going to see that exposure to the building. And so that exposure is literally the first thing they're going to see about your building. And I think there could be some improvement stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I would just, if I could comment back to that a little bit, because, I would say certainly the focus on the building is around the courtyard, and there's a lot of depth and multiple layers. In the back, what we did try to do, and it's hard to see it from there, we have different material, different roof lines, so that's going to give you that appearance. And this is probably a bad angle. If we were up at a bird's eye or 30 degree, you might see it better. And then we do have that walkway in front, which is going to come out about 6-8 feet. And that's got the little, the little, just a covered area coming off the roof, just 3 feet out. So I think this picture probably doesn't display it as much. Plus, that round building is set out a little, so there is some depth going on. It's a tough angle, and I think the white elements really do show up right there. Also, to the right, you don't see that here, but we have an area where there's quite a long roof between the first and second level. We've even considered putting a little back patio there too, so it's probably about 8 feet deep. And then on the far west side, where the building turns, you'll have another red roof. It's about 3,000 square foot building on the roof, or on the second level, that does have the deck on the front side. You'll have a nice view of that. And I don't think we have a good angle of that, honestly, what we sent you. So I apologize for that. And these, of course,
I'm just take it into consideration. That particularly you had said, and I think it was Jason talked about the fact that you can split the floor plans up on some of those units, so you could actually be renting a unit that's in the backside.
Right.
And to the extent that you had businesses in there that could use the backside and activate it with dining or outdoor shopping or whatever, just places that would actually people actually use that north exposure.
Yeah.
It would be, I think that would be positive.
The plan is actually to do, specifically, there's a restaurant, or not a restaurant, a coffee type bakery that's going to go right where that arrow is. It's going to take the front to the back, and you could be at any spot in there. You'd feel, like you could walk in from either side. Yeah.
Mayor, can I make one more comment?
Yes, Councilman Brandon Watson.
The other thing, that was made, you stated at the beginning that this is lacking a lot of the landscaping design. And I would hope to see some, planter beds or raised planters, to soften that backside. I think a little bit is probably what's missing. And it just doesn't, because it's not shown in the design as it is right now. I think that's possibly contributing to the harsh feel of it.
Yeah, there will be trees back there that you don't see in the parking lot. We just didn't put them in that.
So this will go back to the design review board when it's final, when it says final plans. Correct or not correct?
It's already been, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Design Review Board approved this concept with those three conditions that Jason mentioned. So there is some items that go back to Development Review Board, but not the actual design of the buildings.
So it was approved with conditions.
When you get it finished, when you got everything, the landscaping done, you know exactly what you're gonna do on the backside with trees or how you're gonna activate that space, that you bring it back to council one more time. Sure. So that, I mean, that's what I would like to see as a motion to accept the recommendation of the design review board and approve the design review package for Litchfield Square Lot 3 with the three conditions that were on their approval. And then we add an additional condition that when the project is ready to be kicked off and actually built, everything is finalized, that they come back here with the final design approved next, so we can see what the final finished package looks like. So that is there a motion for that effect? So is there a second? If there's any further discussion on the motion, if not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, next item. I'm sorry. Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's on the agenda. Go ahead.
My congratulations. Well done.
We need this to finish the next two steps.
I understand that. Bought into the concept.
We bought into the concept. He's taking it through it. It's good. All right, next item is the approval of the development agreement with LP Heritage Partners LLC. Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. One of the ultimate action for this project tonight is the development agreement. And we, as you know, we've been working long and hard with Mr. Hirth and his partners to develop this agreement, and staff have worked long and hard on our side as well. You already know that the project will consist of about 40,000 square feet with 18,000 square feet of office, 8,000 feet of restaurant or thereabouts, and 14,000 square feet of retail. What I'd like to do is just kind of run through some of the highlights and then we can talk about it some more. So one of the requirements is that, that's in the development agreement, is that Heritage Partners builds offsite parking for their project. And you saw that in their site plan. They have a demand for about 237 parking spaces. 106 of those will be provided in that, and these are rough numbers, in that parking lot that they will build. And then ultimately the other 131 will be provided in other parking lots or in parking garages. In an interim basis, Heritage Partners has agreed to provide some temporary parking lots, which would consist on the Scout Lodge parcel, and also there's a parcel that we haven't sold or that's not committed yet to the west of Maloma Avenue that could be turned into a temporary parking lot, and that'll get them close on a temporary basis. But ultimately, we'll have to solve that problem of the 131 parking spaces. The city will own that parking lot that Mr. Hirth and his partners build. We have, in terms of CFD infrastructure costs, we have agreed to hold the amount of the CFD cost to less than $3 per square foot of the building. And that gives us some flexibility in terms of valuation as to where we can set the tax rate for the CFD. There's a requirement for a separate three-party agreement, the so-called CFD agreement, which is the next item on the agenda. That's a requirement of this development agreement. In terms of the overall parking infrastructure, the policy is to have the development community, including the heritage partners, to pay for about 75% of the cost of all of the ultimate parking for Litchfield Square. And there's some ideas that we have on how to accomplish that. So one of the ideas is to institute a retail/restaurant taxing district that would have an incremental tax, sales tax of not to exceed 3%, that would generate through the users, the ultimate users, customers of the businesses, that additional sales tax that would be raise enough money to sell bonds to pay for parking garages. It doesn't apply to the leasing, the leases or rental taxes, only to the sales tax. That doesn't apply to residential either, because if we have any residential, they're going to want to have reserved parking spaces. And an idea there is to just charge a flat $25,000 per parking space, which would pay us for the capital cost of doing that. And these are all just described in here as ways that the developer will help us pay for the parking garages. We have targeted that 75% reimbursement as an obligation to the property, and that we expect that the sales tax, depending on his mix of uses, will cover that 75%. But if not, then we have some other options, such as for office space per month parking fees, and perhaps some other things too as well. A little bit about the construction schedule. The start of construction for this agreement cannot be later than 12 months following the close of escrow. In order to close escrow, we need this development agreement approved, and I think with the approval of the site plan, we can move ahead with that. There's some other things like, a big check that has to be deposited. The completion of construction for the project cannot be later than 18 months after the start. So if we close escrow in the next few weeks or whatever, there will be 12 months, not more than 12 months to start of construction, and not more than 18 months after that to complete the construction of the project. The completion is defined as all of the site improvements are done, including the parking lot, and the building shell is ready for tenants. It does not include tenant improvements. So that would come, very difficult to predict when those will come along. There is a provision for liquidated damages for the city if we fail to build what's called the initial public improvements on or before a C of O is requested. C of O would be requested at the time that the first tenant improvement is ready for occupancy. So we have quite a bit of time to get those to get those initial public improvements completed, and those improvements are described in the development agreement as to be basically access from Litchfield Road and the completion of Village Parkway across the front of the property, and then some basic improvements completed in the park. And I think that's all I have, man.
Okay. One of the difficulties with this agreement is no one really knows what's going to happen with parking garages. It's very dependent upon how many square feet we actually end up having demand for. If we have demand for 400,000 square feet, then we're going to have to build parking garages. we have no idea what the cost is, because we don't know when we're gonna build it. And we don't know what it's gonna cost to have a bond, we don't have debt service, because we have no idea what the interest is. So we have all these unknowns. What we have done in the development is basically agree on strategies and how it will work in the future, when we can define really what issues are exactly with us. And it's the developer has been very flexible, and the city has been flexible, trying to come up with a scheme that will deal with whatever we get presented with several years from now. Because we're not going to know this answer. Really, it could easily be 2 or 3 or 4 years from now before we can have it. We'll have a handle on how many square feet is going to get built there. What's the timing of parking garages? When we get really good enough definition, when we can implement the strategies to take the bond such stuff. So the agreement, I think, has been it was very. There was a lot of back and forth on the agreement, trying to find language that both could live with, that would give us flexibility, but also provide agreement that we are going to recapture cost of bond payments if we have to have parking. And an acknowledgement by the developer that there's 260 parking spot need, and 106. So there's 160 that got to come from something. And I think that really was a difficult thing, I think, from a developer standpoint. It's an area that he doesn't have his risk totally defined. He doesn't know exactly how this is all going to work, how the financial pencil out. But I think he understands the strategy that the city's going to employ to be able to make it all work, and you know what the problem is. That we have to define the problem first. So, comments or questions from council? Mr. Vice Mayor, you look all ready. If there are no comments or questions, then I'm happy to take a motion. All right. Well, we need a motion to adopt resolution 22-532. If my eyes are right. 532, approving the development agreement with Heritage Partners LLC for development of Lot 3 in Litchfield Square as presented, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll make it.
The move in second. Is there any further discussion from council? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, final item that we need to get done in this meeting before we go to our next meeting. We're getting close. We need to approve and adopt a CFD development agreement, which is an agreement that has been required of us by our bond council, correct? Correct. It's the bond. So our bond council has required us to have a separate development agreement that covers the CFD. It is how many? It's all basically all pages of things that will fascinate you for a bond insurance. It's not. It basically defines that we're going to have a CFD, and our intention is, and this is the back of the napkin, kind of deal that we work on. We expect to have about a $15 million bond, pay back the improvements to the city. So the city's putting in 20 million of improvements. We're getting 15 million back. That bond will have a carrying cost on service requirements of about $1 million to $1.2 million. So if you have 400,000 square feet, that means per square foot would be $3 per square foot. So that's the concept, and that's all explained in the CFD development. So I don't know if you have a further explanation, Mr. City Manager. I didn't mean to steal your thunder. But...
Two short points on that. This agreement does have to be adopted by the city and also by the CFD. As you know, of course, the CFD board is the city council, so it's the same group. But again, it does have to be approved by both groups. So we'll approve it in this meeting, then we'll go to the CFD group. Also, we do have one of our bond attorneys, Zach, is here with us tonight. If you have any questions on this CFD agreement, he can explain it much better than I could. To the mayor's point about the $3 per square foot, as I've told Mike, if I was him, that would be my biggest concern. And I've told Mike where it is in this document. It is in there in multiple places, again, at $3 per square foot. The rest of it is, as the mayor very well said, it's CFD language and CFD necessities, and I'll leave it at that. For deeper questions, I would refer them to Zach or Joe, either one.
Zach wants to go into extreme detail. 60, 90 minutes.
Are there any questions or comments about the CFD development?
One time.
What's that?
One time.
No, it goes on for the length of the bond. So it's debt service. $3 a square foot per year. Yeah. And it pays for the bond service and costs for X number of years.
It's essentially a profit plus.
Basically what we just did this evening when we set a levy on CFD for this. Any comments or questions? If not, I need a motion to approve and adopt resolution number 22-530. Moved by Councilman Brandon Watson, seconded by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution is adopted. I don't believe we have a need. I don't believe we have a need for executive session, correct? So is there a motion to adjourn the regular city council? So second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. And now we're going to call to order the Litchfield Square Community Facilities District. First item is to approve the minutes from our June 15th, 2022 special meeting. The motion to approve the minutes. We moved in second. Is there any discussion concerning the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes from the June 15th, 2022 special meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is approved. Minutes are approved. Next item is the adoption of Litchfield Square CFD Resolution 22-05, which is the ad valorem tax levy for fiscal year 23. As you can see in your packet, we're adopting a levy of 0. So I'm assuming there's not going to be a lot of questions about this. We have no debt service, so we don't have to raise any cash. So is there a motion to approve Resolution 22-05, which is the ad valorem tax levy for fiscal year 23? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is adopted. Next item is to adopt resolution LS Litchfield Square CFD 22-06, which is approving the Litchfield Square development agreement with Litchfield Park Heritage LLC and the district. So it's approving the development agreement between Heritage Partners and the city. Okay. So you're making a motion to adopt resolution number LSCFD 22-06. Go second. Second. Okay, so move to second. Any discussion from council? Yes, Councilman Brandon Watson. No? Silent.
Sorry, I thought you were needing a second still.
Well, we got a second. All right, we're seeing if there's no discussion or no questions. All those in favor of the motion to adopt resolution LSCFD 2206, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Is there a motion to adjourn? And we can sit here, wait.
Councilwoman Donahue.
Donahue moved. Okay, it's been moved that we adjourn. Is there a second? Okay, wait a second. And Commissioner Mayor Watson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye, we're adjourned. One night.